Warrior Lore. Chapter 1548. Dazzling golden lightning emanated from Han Shinran's body and gathered around him. The dense lightning was so dense that it became even more dazzling. It could destroy souls and primordial spirits. No need. It would take too much time to defeat you with a talisman formation. Du Xiaofu looked at Han Shinran and shook his head. He looked at the golden lightning and licked his lips. It seemed to be able to destroy all souls and primordial spirits. If he had the chance to integrate with the heavenly soul divine thunder, he would be able to advance further. You are indeed arrogant, but you can't afford to be arrogant in front of me, Han Shinran said indifferently, revealing his white teeth. The next moment, his body moved like lightning, like a tiger pouncing on its prey. He moved like thunder. In Du Xiaofu's eyes, his figure expanded rapidly. Golden lightning arcs gathered in the sky, and with a golden lightning finger, he pointed at Du Xiaofu's forehead. What amazing speed! Hang Qi, Void Spirit, and the others could not help but exclaim. Han Shinran's speed was far above theirs. Even with the power of their primordial spirits, it was difficult to catch him. But Du Xiaofu dodged it. His body was like duckweed, standing on the ground in an arc, like a roly-poly toy, directly avoiding Han Shinran's golden thunderbolt fingerprints. Swish! Han Shinran's eyes moved as fast as lightning. He stretched out his 5 fingers and turned them into a lightning claw. It twisted the space, squeezed the air, and pierced through the void. It went straight for Du Xiaofu's throat. Fast, fierce, accurate. Han Shinran's first move was too much for the eyes to take in. His speed and power were a perfect combination. He didn't have Hang Qi or Qi Jiajun's earth-shattering power, but the danger contained in this move was far greater than Hang Qi and the others. Fierce and swift. It was obvious that Han Shinran had been through hundreds of battles. His achievements were definitely not as simple as growing up in a greenhouse. At this moment, this move was enough to prove that Han Shinran had once bathed in blood and had gone through countless trials. The claw print crushed the air and instantly reached Du Xiaofu's throat. But at this moment, just as the claw was about to reach Du Xiaofu's throat, Du Xiaofu's figure rapidly retreated. He shook his arm, and a fist collided with the claw. Bang! This collision was like a bolt of lightning descending from the sky. Lightning flashed and countless electric arcs spread. Destructive lightning strength was unleashed at this moment, causing the space to continuously tremble. Ding ding! Han Shinran staggered back 2 steps. His eyes were changing color, and his palms were numb and painful. What shocked Han Shinran even more was that his opponent was as immovable as a mountain, like a boulder. His heavenly soul divine thunder did not have any effect at all. It surged into his opponent's body and did not seem to cause any harm to his primordial spirit. Instead, it seemed to be devoured by his primordial spirit. Han Shinran's feeling was right, but at this moment, it was not Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit that was devouring the power of the heavenly soul divine thunder. Du Xiaofu's primordial spirit wanted to devour it, but it was stopped by the round stone in his Naiwen palace. That stone was like a living creature, and it could not wait to rush out and devour it. It was completely unafraid of the terrible power of the lightning. It was like sucking breast milk, and the more the better. This made Du Xiaofu surprised. That strange stone was too strange. Oh no, it seems that he did not gain any advantage. Countless legalism disciples, who had been watching intently and expectantly, saw that not only did Han Shinran not gain any advantage, but he also seemed to be at a disadvantage. They began to feel incredulous, and their bodies, which had just become relaxed, suddenly became dignified again. Not very good. Is this all you have? Du Xiaofu said, looking at Han Shinran. His battle clothes flapped in the wind, and he was not afraid of the golden electric arcs that filled the sky. It's just a test. You are indeed qualified to make me use my full strength. The moment his voice fell, a ripple visible to the naked eye spread out from Han Shinran's body and swept up into the sky. Suddenly, Han Shinran's hair stood on end, and his body erupted with divine light. His eyes flickered like the sun, and his aura swept out in all directions. The aura of the sealed domain realm descended, but it was far stronger than ordinary sealed domain realm cultivators. It was accompanied by a sky full of golden lightning, and the pressure was unimaginable. The terrifying pressure made the surrounding legalism disciples go limp, and the experts of the major clans, including Hung Chi, felt their hearts tremble. The sealed domain realm. Han Shinran has really stepped into the sealed domain realm. The young experts of the major clans and factions trembled. Huang Ling, and the gorgeous woman not far away were also shocked. At this moment, Han Shinran was like a supreme being on the proving stage, surrounded by golden lightning that clanged loudly. His aura was like that of a mighty army galloping forward. His body emitted a dazzling light, and his eyes also surged with dazzling lightning. The world was in an uproar, and countless people's hearts trembled. The young man in the brocade robe was too powerful. "You're no match for me," Han Shinran said, his voice like thunder that shook one's soul. The golden lightning around him surged like golden waves, and his divine might was awe-inspiring. If he came out, he would be able to sweep through the world, stand alone, and shake the world. "It's just the sealed domain realm. No pressure," Du Xiaofu replied, but inwardly, he was also somewhat shocked. Legalism was indeed powerful, and no faction above Kyushu could compare. Let alone Han Shinran. Even if Li Chuya came out, none of the major factions above Kyushu would be able to resist him. However, Du Xiaofu was not afraid. It was just the sealed domain realm. He had seen more than one sealed domain realm cultivator, and he had killed more than one so far. Han Shinran was far stronger than the sealed domain realm cultivators in the outside world, but Du Xiaofu was not the same as before. Although he did not use martial power, Du Xiaofu's tempering of his physical body was not just for show. Not long ago, Du Xiaofu's physical body and cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds, thanks to the benefits he had gained from the rich dragon chi baptism in the palace. Now, Du Xiaofu could sweep through the world with just his physical strength alone. Now that he had the power of a talisman master, there was nothing to be afraid of. Is that so? If you can still be so stubborn, then I'll let you know what despair is. As Han Shinran spoke, a majestic force swept out, causing the void to tremble, heaven and earth to tremble, clouds to move, and the void to shake. A terrifying aura erupted from Han Shinran's body once again, affecting the energy of heaven and earth in all directions. The void above the demonstration platform began to blur and distort. Heavens, what kind of power is this? It can affect heaven and earth. This aura is too terrifying. The surrounding heroes were truly moved and horrified. That terrifying power was affecting heaven and earth. At this moment, Han Shinran was like a god descending, and his pressure was terrifying. At this moment, Han Shinran had already stepped onto the demonstration platform. The void flowed with a hazy radiance, and a sacred aura descended, causing the surrounding disciples of legalism to look up at the void and kneel down. I know, that's the power of a supreme being. Han Shinran is a supreme being. No, he hasn't reached the true supreme being level yet. Among the various families, someone exclaimed and trembled with fear. No, he's not a true supreme being, but a half-step supreme being. Han Shinran has surpassed the human supreme being and became a half-step supreme being. In the crowd, Huang Linger spoke, her seven-colored eyes rippling with divine splendor. A half-step supreme being was already terrifying enough, but anyone who was related to a supreme being would be terrifying. A half-step supreme being. In the distance, the experts of legalism and the old man smiled. A half-step supreme being was one of the strongest existences in the world. Han Shinran's talent had surpassed the human supreme being. Although he was only a half-step supreme being, it was enough to look down on the world and shake the world. A half-step supreme being. Du Xiaofu looked at Han Shinran and felt the power of his aura. Then, he murmured softly, Xiaojing seems to be a natural-born supreme being. Kid, are you desperate? Han Shinran was in the sky at this moment, looking down at Du Xiaofu. A supreme being had descended to the world. Golden electric arcs fluctuated, and divine splendor poured down like a rain of light, like a miracle. Chapter 1549. Someone like you. I can beat 10 of you. Du Xiaofu looked at Han Shinran with a serious look. That guy is really arrogant to the end. He doesn't know what death is. The graceful woman of legalism looked down on Du Xiaofu and sneered. She believed in her second brother Han Qinran unreservedly. That arrogant guy was about to be trampled. I'm a half-step supreme being. In front of me, even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up. Even if you're a tiger, you'll have to lie down. Han Qinran shouted, and his voice shook the sky. His words made the people of the dragons, who were in the distance, look terrible. Boom! The air was trembling. Han Qinran had made his move. Violent power began to pour out from his body in all directions, shaking the void in all directions. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The sky was full of golden thunderbolts, dazzling runes, and supreme power, cosmic form of heaven and earth. With a thunderous shout, Han Qinran launched his attack, twisting this part of the world, as if he was controlling the world. From the high sky, a bright circular vortex was formed. The circular vortex condensed into a solid object, turning into a spiral vortex, tearing the space. A terrible power descended from the ninth heaven, directly enveloping Du Xiaofu. The terrible spiral vortex descended, and a vision of heaven and earth appeared. The surrounding space cracked, revealing a heart-palpitating dark light, making the world tremble violently. Then the sky collapsed, and the void exploded, emitting a bright and dazzling light. This cosmic form of heaven and earth suppressed and destroyed everything, revealing a terrible momentum. The surrounding people looked at it, trembling with fear, and their primordial spirits. It was a force that could destroy the heavens and the earth. It was unstoppable as it crushed down. Du Xiaofu also moved. At this moment, the whole world began to ripple with a violent and majestic destructive energy. Silver-gold electric arcs fluctuated, becoming brighter and brighter, like rolling up a sea of thunder, violently surging, and a violent destructive energy filled the air. Roar! Amidst the surging silver-gold electric arcs, a dazzling silver-gold electric arc rushed out. The electric arcs splashed into the sky, and a thunderous beast roar resounded. In the next instant, a gigantic silver-gold lightning tortoise that was thousands of feet long appeared. It soared into the sky with dazzling lightning arcs and destructive lightning energy that shook the space. This giant lightning tortoise was originally the soul seed dharma idol of the great earth-shattering thunder. Now that Du Xiaofu had condensed it with 3 types of spiritual lightning and the pressure of a supreme being, its power had increased exponentially. Its might was boundless. Roar! The silver-gold lightning tortoise raised its head like a giant dragon and soared into the sky. Its terrifying roar was like a thunderclap from the ninth heaven. Just this sound wave alone was enough to cause the primordial spirit of an ordinary martial domain realm cultivator to tremble. Under countless stunned gazes, the huge silver-gold lightning tortoise rushed into Han Qinran's spiral vortex. In an instant, it was as if countless bombs had been thrown into the huge wave, and thunderous sounds resounded from it. Rumble, dazzling electric arcs overflowed, and lightning runes surged wildly. The world was about to be shattered. The martial-proof platform and the vast square were trembling, and the earth and mountains were shaking. If it were not for the support of the talisman array, the world would have been destroyed. The terrifying collision caused countless onlookers around the square to retreat. The energy aftermath that spread out was enough to kill a martial-honored realm cultivator. Ding ding! Under everyone's gaze, Han Qinran staggered back on the martial-proof platform. His footsteps shook the martial-proof platform. Puff! Han Qinran's eyes were trembling, and his expression was horrified. When he finally stabilized his body, he opened his mouth and a wisp of blood flowed out. Ding ding! At this moment, Du Xiaofu only staggered back a little in the void. He stepped on the air, and the space rippled under his feet. His body stood still again. Han Qinran is injured. The crowd was shocked, and countless eyes were trembling. Oh my God, is this true? That arrogant guy had withstood it again, and Han Qinran was injured. Han Qinran, who was a half-step to supreme martial artist, was still unable to defeat that arrogant guy. That spiritual thunder is too strong, and its aura is complex. It seems like the legendary earth-shattering thunder, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems to have the aura of the legendary silver silk soul-devouring thunder. So strange. In the distance, the legalism experts were also trembling. Han Shinran had used all his strength to activate the legalism's heaven and earth dharma form, but he was still injured. This was unacceptable to them. He defeated Han Shinran, a half-step to supreme martial artist, with pure primordial spirit strength. His primordial spirit strength is too terrifying. He is a demon. Among the crowd, there was a beautiful, shy girl with a smile that was like a flower. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. Is this the despair you want to give me? It seems that the effect is only to disappoint me. Is this all the younger generation of legalism can do? Du Xiaofu looked down at Han Shinran with a domineering look, like a real god of war. Han Shinran's eyes trembled, and his eyes shone with golden light. His face was pale, and he was frozen in place. His expression became serious, and then Han Shinran did not say anything. He formed a hand seal, and a vast aura suddenly permeated the world. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Han Shinran stepped into the air, and his brocade robe was covered with an energy armor. The runes shone brightly, and divine light surged, rushing into the sky, making the whole world seem sacred. In an instant, Han Shinran appeared in the air, and his body was wrapped in the light of runes. The mysterious runes intertwined in the void, and there was a shocking fluctuation in the surroundings. Bright golden arcs of lightning danced in his eyes like the sun. Boom! Suddenly, the world trembled, and there was a sonorous sound of wind and thunder, as if a supreme force was crushing down. Chila! Han Shinran closed his eyes, and then opened them again. Just as his eyes opened, there was a frightening beam of light that swept out like thunder. His gaze could illuminate the boundless void, and see through the past and the present. Roar! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Han Shinran activated his martial vein, and the power of a half-step supreme. Han Shinran activated his martial vein spirit, which was a pure-blooded white tiger phantom that had turned into a real spirit. Its whole body was shining with white light, and it was peerless in the sky. Han Shinran also activated the heavenly soul divine thunder in his body and several other terrifying means. The void was collapsing, and the world was collapsing. At this moment, Han Shinran's body was surging with divine light, and it was like a miracle. He activated many means and merged them together. Thunder and lightning rushed into the sky, and the white tiger roared. Some beasts spread their wings and soared into the sky, and some dragons roared, turning into a vision of heaven and earth. That's the power of the law of legalism and the combination of the power of magic. The young people of the various clans exclaimed. Obviously, Han Shinran had cultivated the power of the law of legalism to such a terrifying level. The heavenly Tao is far, and the human Tao is far. Break the law. At this moment, Han Shinran was standing in the void, without the slightest seriousness, only majesty and power. He gathered everything and looked down on the world like a supreme being. Boom! As soon as the last word was spoken, Han Shinran waved his hand and unleashed all of his power to suppress Du Xiaofu. This was the Tao of legalism. The combination of magic and power, and the power of the law was boundless. Rumble. At this moment, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, and it was as if thunder had exploded. The void was bright and blazing, and the destructive power was natural and spread out from the sky. This terrifying attack turned the void into nothingness, and cracks appeared in the space where it passed. This scene caused everyone to tremble in fear, and their hair to stand on end. The terrifying pressure and energy made all living beings tremble at this moment. Han Shinran, the #1 person of the younger generation of legalism, no one would think that he was not powerful enough at this moment. No one would deny the strength of the guy who called himself the god of war at this moment, and he even made Han Shinran suffer a loss just now. Can the god of war still resist? But now, everyone had to be on tenterhooks because Han Shinran was really too powerful at this moment. Chapter 1550. Mu Yumming, Yu Bufan, and the others stared blankly at the sky, their nerves tense. They stood at the edge of the square, shocked to the point that they were speechless. The legalism experts in the distance were also shocked at this moment. The mysterious young man was able to force Han Shinran to such an extent, it could be said that he was strong. If such a young man could be subdued and used by the legalism, it would be enough to suppress the other 8 families and the other forces. Some legalism elders pondered and were shocked. Indeed, he is much stronger than the previous ones. On the martial-proof stage, Du Xiaofu smiled, his eyes full of appreciation. When the faint voice came out of his mouth, a silver-gold arc of light flashed out of Du Xiaofu's forehead, releasing a violent and destructive pressure in an instant. Boom! The pressure of a true, supreme being instantly descended, and the power of the silver-gold lightning that filled the sky suddenly increased exponentially. This was the fusion of the 3 kinds of spiritual thunder in Du Xiaofu's mind at this moment, and the mysterious spiritual root was no longer hidden and suppressed. From yesterday to today's battle, Du Xiaofu had used the power of his soul, but he did not use the 3 kinds of spiritual thunder and the mysterious spiritual root. Chi-la-la, a huge silver-gold thunder tree appeared in the void, and the supreme pressure from the strange silver-gold thunder tree poured out in all directions, dazzling and palpitating the sky. It was the 3 kinds of spiritual thunder in Du Xiaofu's soul, and the mysterious spiritual root condensed without reservation. On the silver-gold thunder tree, mysterious runes shone brightly, covering the whole tree, covering the sky and the sun. The ancient and domineering aura was bleak and magnificent, and it could not be provoked, containing violent destruction. Han Shinran urged his full strength, and at this moment, Du Xiaofu also completely used the power of his soul, spiritual thunder, and the mysterious spiritual root. Boom, boom, boom. When the 1,000-foot thunder tree appeared in the void, it suddenly shocked the audience, and thunder rolled around as if it was going to destroy the world. I know, that's the Golden Crow Heaven-Burning Lightning. The Golden Crow Heaven-Burning Lightning that's rumored to be related to the Golden-Winged Great Rocks. Far away from the plaza, a legalism elder suddenly trembled. I understand now. I understand everything now. The silver silk soul devouring lightning, the earth-shattering lightning, and the golden crow sky burning lightning. This kid doesn't have just one type of spiritual lightning. He has fused 3 types of spiritual lightning into his body. A middle-aged man's voice trembled. His nascent soul trembled as he stared at the huge silver-gold lightning tree in the sky. His eyes shone with divine light, fusing 3 spiritual thunders into one. Miracle. This is a miracle. Unbelievable. A legalist old man trembled, finding it hard to believe that something like this would happen. It was as difficult as ascending to heaven for ordinary people to fuse with a spiritual thunder. Han Shinran, as a genius, had fused with the heavenly soul divine thunder with the help of his seniors and the protection of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. But in the end, he almost failed. At this moment, the mysterious young man had fused 3 spiritual lightnings into his body. Just how abnormal and miraculous was this? There seems to be a spiritual root in the young man's nascent soul. This spiritual root seems to be, a legalism expert's expression changed. The giant lightning tree contained a supreme aura. Although it had already fused with 3 spiritual thunders, he still managed to detect it. At this moment, in the sky that was about to collapse, Han Shinran's momentum was natural. But when the 1,000-foot giant lightning tree appeared in the sky, it trembled visibly. Han Shinran was like a supreme being, but he was still lacking. After all, he was only half a step away from being a supreme being. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The silver-gold lightning tree emitted an ancient aura. It was a real supreme being that couldn't be resisted. It couldn't be provoked. Mysterious runes burst out from the silver-gold lightning tree. They directly traversed the void and were deeply planted in the sky. A magnificent and desolate aura spread. The aura of the giant lightning tree was like a supreme being, stopping the terrifying and violent destructive power of the former. At the same time, the silver-gold lightning tree's electric arcs filled the void. It was as if countless lightning tree roots were taking root and sprouting, absorbing the energy of the heavenly soul divine thunder in all directions. Then, under everyone's stunned gaze, a shocking scene appeared in the sky. The heavenly soul divine thunder, activated by Han Shinran, was swallowed by the giant lightning tree. The white tiger meridian spirit was violently destroyed by the silver gold lightning. The ferocious birds and beasts in the void and the strange phenomena of heaven and earth were destroyed by the silver gold lightning. At this moment, the terrifying momentum of the world seemed so weak in front of the giant silver gold lightning tree. The silver gold lightning tree was the real supreme being at this moment. Boom! Du Xiaofu stepped out. His battle clothes fluttered. He didn't look like a talisman master at all. The god of war soared through the sky, unpredictable and ghostly. He waved his hand and punched Han Shinran's energy armor. Puff! Han Shinran's energy armor shattered with one punch. Han Shinran's body fell straight from the sky. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood and finally landed heavily on the square. Bang! When the extraordinary young man fell from the sky onto the martial-proof platform, all the legalism disciples felt like they had fallen from heaven to hell. Walala! In the air, all the terrifying energy spread out like a storm. When it reached the distant sky, it suddenly stopped and dissipated into nothingness. There was a dead silence. Everyone's eyes were dull as if time had stopped. Everyone was stunned. Han Shinran, the number one of the younger generation of legalism, was defeated by a talisman master from the outside world. If this news spread out, it would definitely cause great waves in heaven and earth. At this moment, the hearts of all the legalism experts present began to churn. Their hearts were in turmoil. At this moment, they had really realized that this was a big problem. Han Shinran was defeated and his dignity was greatly damaged. The outside world would also be stirred up because of this. At that time, if the mysterious young man was not willing to be used, he would be a great threat to legalism. Oh my God! After the dead silence, the people of the major families and forces were in an uproar. The young experts of the major families who were defeated yesterday knew that they were lucky not to be tortured to death yesterday. That guy is a tyrannical scammer. Then the people of the 8 great families said in a weak voice. The guy who called himself the god of war was so tyrannical. Yesterday, he pretended to fight with them to get the treasures. Countless legalism disciples present were in a state of panic at this moment. Their faces were pale. The number one of the younger generation of the school of legalism had actually been defeated by a talisman master from the outside world, and in such a clean manner. Did this mean that the school of legalism had truly declined? This is impossible, impossible. On the martial-proof platform, Han Shinran got up. His robe was stained with blood, and the corner of his mouth was overflowing with blood. His handsome face was a little fierce and his eyes were a little dazed. Then Han Shinran looked up at Du Xiaofu. His white teeth were stained with blood. He said in a cold voice, "I don't believe it. How could I be defeated by you?" He was Han Shinran, who was half a step away from the supreme talent. He was only half a step away from the supreme talent. He also had the heavenly soul thunder and practiced the Dharma way of legalism. He was born with great power and could dominate the world. But now, he was defeated by a talisman master from the outside world. This was a blow that he could not believe in his life. Boom! As soon as Han Shinran finished speaking, dazzling runes gushed out of his body again. They were invisibly connected with the world quake plate, which was sealed in the restriction. Inside the restriction, the world quake plate, which was originally calm, suddenly shone brightly. It was covered with ancient runes and began to flow with a terrible aura. The mysterious runes intertwined, and the world quake plate shone. Through the restriction set by Du Xiaofu, it also emitted an amazing fluctuation. Obviously, Han Shinran was going to use the world quake plate. He wanted to use the world quake plate to verify it. He did not believe that he would be defeated by an outsider. Bastard, that's my treasure. Du Xiaofu's heart trembled. The world quake plate was too terrifying. It was going to destroy the restriction set by him. It was impossible to restrain it. Swish! The space between his eyebrows shone and an ancient aura fluctuated. Du Xiaofu directly activated the ancient desolate space and let the space-time fluctuate to store the world quake plate. In order to prevent Dragon Fifth and the others from copying him, Du Xiaofu did not hesitate to store the heavenly dragon cover, coiling dragon war god armor, evil warding yin-yang chain, and mystic radiance void sword into the ancient, desolate space. Han Shinran's face changed again. He felt that the world quake plate had suddenly lost its connection with him. This was almost impossible, but it did happen. Oh no, I lost contact with the barbarian war spear. No, I also lost contact with my dragon shadow phoenix dancing whip. My evil warding yin-yang chain has also lost its trace. I can't contact it anymore. At the same time, Zhang Wanzheng, Hui Mutian, and the others also felt this incredible change. Their hearts were bleeding. How dare you touch my treasure? Get out of my way. The moment he withdrew the ancient, desolate space, Du Xiaofu was enraged. Like lightning, he kicked Han Shinran's chest fiercely. Bang! Like a stone being kicked, Han Shinran's ribs were broken. In the muffled sound of thunder from his chest, his body was kicked out of the martial-proof platform. Puffed! Blood spurted out of his mouth. Han Shinran's body finally landed heavily on the square. This kick broke the hearts of all the legalism members, old and young, like broken glass. Legalism. Is this the strength of the younger generation? Du Xiaofu glanced in all directions and looked at the densely packed figures in the square. Suddenly, he looked up at the sky and his body glowed. He shouted, "Is there no one left in legalism? Is there anyone who dares to come out and fight?" His voice was like a raging wave that swept across the entire legalism, shaking the clouds and the earth. Is he challenging the entire legalism? All the major forces and families were shocked. This guy was clearly challenging the entire legalism at this moment. How arrogant. This is challenging the legalism. In the distance, the old man of legalism suddenly became furious and his face changed color. The mysterious young man kicked Han Shinran off the martial-proof platform and declared that there was no one left in legalism. How arrogant. This was a challenge to the legalism. Since ancient times, this was definitely the first time that someone dared to be so presumptuous in legalism. Moreover, it was a boy from the outside world. In the square, some people with sharp primordial spirit raised their heads and felt a lot of obscure auras descending on the square at this moment. Huang Ling Er's colorful eyes were filled with shock. She murmured softly, "How will legalism end? I'm afraid that the hidden person has to come out." Boom. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the sky. A dazzling path of light spread out in the sky and appeared above the void like a miracle. A hazy shadow appeared on the dazzling path of light as if it had emerged from the void. It was hazy and filled with divine light, making it difficult for people to see the formation clearly. However, this method had already shocked everyone. In particular, there was a real supreme aura descending, making people want to be scared out of their wits and kneel down. "I'll give you a chance. Go back and recover. Tomorrow morning, on the martial-proof platform, only you at your peak will be qualified for me to fight." The voice was ethereal and fell slowly, but it made people who heard it feel like a heavy drum was being hammered. It made people's hearts tremble and their minds panic for no reason. In the end, everything disappeared and the surroundings returned to calmness. Du Xiaofu looked at the void. There were some fluctuations in his eyes, and then they became clear again. "Tomorrow? Will it appear tomorrow, then?" Du Xiaofu murmured with a smile. He turned around and looked around. In the end, he waved to the people of the various clans and said, "Thank you for the treasures. If anyone wants to get their money back, you're welcome to challenge me tomorrow." After speaking, Du Xiaofu stomped his foot. His battle robe and hair fluttered as he left. Watching the young man in battle robe leave, the square was still in silence. It took a long time for people to recover from their shock. In the 8 great families, Zhang Wanzheng, Hui Mutian, Master Void Spirit, Yin Lihan, and the others looked at the departing figure. They wanted to stop him, but their legs were still trembling, and they couldn't take a step forward. They could only watch helplessly as the young man in battle robes left. Their hearts were bleeding. The treasures that they had with them, the precious treasures of their clans, were all taken away by that guy at this moment. Chapter 1551. The reason why Hui Mutian, Void Spirit, and the others took out their treasures was because they never thought that the kid from the outside world would be able to defeat them. They took out their treasures because that guy insisted on seeing their treasures before accepting the challenge. Secondly, they wanted to prove the strength of their families in front of the other families. If others had treasures, so did they. When they saw Du Xiaofu seal their treasures, they didn't take it to heart. They didn't believe that the seal could truly seal their treasures. They also disdained to rely on their treasures to defeat Du Xiaofu. If they had to rely on their treasures to defeat Du Xiaofu in the end, it would be a loss of face for them. What's more, those treasures were connected to their primordial spirits. It was almost impossible to cut them off. Therefore, those treasures were probably placed there. That kid couldn't take them away even if he wanted to. They could take them back at any time. But now, Hui Mutian, Zhang Wanzhang, and the others were completely heartbroken. The treasures had been taken away. They didn't know what had happened, but the connection with them had been completely cut off. Now, it could be said that they had really lost those treasures. At first, they didn't care, but now that they had really lost their treasures, they were all crying. It was too late for regrets. Bastard. That guy is too deceitful. He did it on purpose. That guy deliberately cheated us of our treasures. After the young experts of the 9 families recovered from their shock, they began to curse one by one, especially for Zhang Wanzhang, Void Spirit, and the others. They had lost their treasures. It would be difficult for them to explain when they went back. What they had lost were not ordinary treasures. At this moment, Du Xiaofu directly returned to the courtyard where he was staying. As for those treasures that had been cut off from Zhang Wanzhang and the others, the reason was very simple. Du Xiaofu had hidden the purple lightning profound cauldron in the ancient, desolate space. Du Xiaofu had placed the world-shaking plate, profound radiance void sword, and other treasures in the purple lightning profound cauldron. Not to mention cutting off the connection, no one could find them. Not long after, Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the rest also returned to the courtyard in a grandiose manner, arriving outside Du Xiaofu's room. Lord War God, you're in trouble now. The 9 great families and the dragons are all cursing you. Yu Bufan was still in shock. He reminded Du Xiaofu that the people in the square were still cursing and scolding the god of battle for swindling treasures. Indeed, at this moment, Yu Bufan and the others were convinced that the war god in front of them was clearly trying to cheat the 9 great families of their treasures. This guy clearly could have defeated Han Qianran, but he hid his strength, causing the 9 great families and the dragons to take out their treasures to challenge him. In the end, he suffered a crushing defeat. Not to mention the 9 great families and the dragons, even Yu Bufan himself felt heartache for them. All they can do is curse. They won't lose any meat if they curse. Could it be that after losing the treasure, they won't even let others curse at them? Could it be that they dare to challenge me? Du Xiaofu's face was full of smiles. He was indifferent and did not mind. Hearing this, Yu Bufan and Mu Yuming could only feel helpless. Indeed, who would dare to challenge the war god now? War god, where did you come from? Mu Yuming was very curious. He was very clear about the younger generation of Kyushu. Even Bailey Wuya, Mu Qingge, and the others couldn't possibly have such strength. It was rumored that Dongli Qihuang was killed by the Demon King Du Xiaofu. The guy in front of him might even be stronger than the Demon King. Such a character didn't have any reputation in Kyushu before. It was too abnormal. I came from a remote place. This time, I came out to sweep away all my peers in the world. Du Xiaofu patted his chest, looking very arrogant and domineering. Little friend War God, are you here? An old voice sounded. A white-haired old man walked in with a smile on his face. His aura was completely restrained, but the invisible aura he exuded still made the hearts of many legalism's young men and women tremble. Who are you? Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the others dispersed. Du Xiaofu appeared in the crowd and asked the old man with a smile. This old man is Shang Yin, ranked 8th among the legalism elders. Little friend, if you give me face, you can call me 8th elder or Elder Shang. Shang Yin said with a smile, but his eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. Not long ago, he was also present at the martial proof stage. The scene of the battle made him feel incredulous. It's the legalism elder. Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the others were stunned. Then, they respectfully stood on both sides and bowed, not daring to breathe. Seeing that Shang Yin was extremely polite and smiling, Du Xiaofu also nodded and asked, "A dignified elder came to find me. Could it be that tomorrow's battle has been cancelled? Could it be that the kid in your legalism wants to privately ask me to let him go?" Du Xiaofu could tell that the person who spoke last must be a young man. He hid behind Han Qianran, which was enough to show his strength and also prove the foundation of legalism. Listening to Du Xiaofu's words, Shang Yinlao could only smile bitterly. This brat was really as daring as the rumors in the clan had said. Shang Yin's expression did not change. He smiled and said, "Tomorrow's battle is your own business. You're all young people. It's good to learn from each other. Maybe you can learn from each other and advance further." Shang Yin's voice paused for a moment, looking around, then continued to smile at Du Xiaofu. "It's all because those idiots didn't know how to do things. This old man came today because I can't wrong little friend. With little friend's talent and strength, you're qualified to be a distinguished guest of legalism. How can you stay here? Come with this old man. You should stay somewhere else." "Where to?" Du Xiaofu asked. Shang Yin smiled and said, "Legalism's core." Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. A trace of righteousness flashed across his eyes. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go take a look inside." Then, Du Xiaofu bid farewell to Yu Bufan and Mu Yuming and left with Shang Yin. He's been valued by legalism. From now on, he's going to have a bright future. With his strength, he defeated Han Qianran, the #1 of legalism's younger generation. Naturally, he'll be valued by legalism, and it'll be more than just a little. Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the others were envious. He was personally invited by the 8th Elder and was valued by legalism. His future was unimaginable. In the air, Du Xiaofu sat on one of the 8th Elder's beast-revered realm demonic beasts and looked down at the vast and boundless land of treasures. "That's my legalism's beast mountain, a place to cultivate beasts. In front is my legalism's herb field, where natural treasures and spiritual herbs are cultivated. On the left, there's a mine that produces all kinds of refining materials. Everything here is from ancient times. Anything here is rare in the outside world, and some are even unheard of in the outside world." Shang Yin explained to Du Xiaofu. What a rich heritage! Du Xiaofu didn't have a good impression of legalism, but at this moment, he couldn't help but tremble. The beast mountain below was endless, hundreds of thousands of miles long. The herb field was vast, like a vast plain. The mine was towering and endless. The top forces in the outside world simply didn't have the qualifications to be mentioned in the same breath. Roar. The 8th Elder, Shang Yin, seemed to be doing this on purpose. He brought Du Xiaofu over to the Beast Mountain, where countless demonic beasts with ancient bloodlines roared, shaking the heavens and earth. Once these demonic beasts reached their peak, they would all be terrifying existences. Flying over the herb field, the fragrance of herbs filled the air, and the light shone. Countless spiritual herbs and precious herbs were thriving. Precious herbs that were rarely seen in the outside world were densely packed in the herb field. For example, treasures like the golden tree and the 7-colored spiritual vine were also shining in the herb field. They were not inferior to the grass of immortality and dark insight grass. They could be used as medicine, and once they gained spiritual intelligence, they would be even more amazing. The mine was continuous, and in some of the caves, there were even strange phenomena that soared into the sky, proving that they contained shocking treasures and materials. Such a place made Du Xiaofu's eyes red with envy, and his blood was pumping. "Where are you from, little friend?" Shang Yin looked at Du Xiaofu, secretly noticing the change in expression on his face, and asked with a smile. Du Xiaofu came back to his senses, straightened his body, and said, "I'm from a remote place. This is my first time leaving the mountain." "Little friend, do you plan to join my legalism?" Shang Yin continued to ask. "Why should I join legalism?" Du Xiaofu asked with a smile. Shang Yin smiled. "Join my school of legalism. With your talent, you'll be able to receive the full support of my school of legalism. You'll be able to use all the cultivation resources, and you'll be able to read the experiences left behind by the seniors of my school of legalism at any time. Before long, you'll definitely become the strongest existence in the world." Shang Yin paused for a moment and looked around. Everything within the school of legalism will also be yours when the time comes. So good. Du Xiaofu was very surprised and tempted. He then shook his head and said to Shang Yin, I'm afraid that won't work. I have already beaten up so many people in your legalism, and they will definitely hate me to death. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind, and the most outstanding will be swept away by the current. If I join legalism, they will definitely ostracize someone as outstanding as me, and I will not be able to blend in with the masses. The strong are destined to be accompanied by loneliness. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Shang Yin suddenly felt that he couldn't continue. If he didn't see the serious expression on Du Xiaofu's face, he would even suspect that Du Xiaofu was fooling him. However, he was the 8th elder of legalism, and no matter how bold this kid was, he wouldn't dare to play with him. Then, Shang Yin looked at Du Xiaofu and said, The strong will only be respected by others, and the strong should not be accompanied by loneliness, but by beauties. There are countless beauties in my legalism, and I don't know if you have someone in mind. If you can become a couple with a beauty in my legalism, then you will completely become a member of my legalism. With your talent, you might even become the new lord of my legalism and walk to the peak of this world. How tempting! Du Xiaofu licked his lips and suddenly looked at Shang Yin seriously. His expression changed, and he asked, But, you mean to say that you want me, the invincible war god, to marry into your legalism? This, Shang Yin smiled and said, This is not considered marrying into your family. My legalism is all-inclusive and can accommodate all things. When the time comes, you young people can do whatever you want. Before Shang Yin could finish his sentence, Du Xiaofu interrupted him. He curled his lips and said in a serious tone, Actually, marrying into the family isn't a big deal. I just don't know how the beauties of your school of legalism are like. If they're beautiful, I can definitely consider it. Chapter 1552. Elder Shang Yin's face twitched, but he still nodded with certainty and said, The beauties of the school of legalism are not just beautiful. They're otherworldly and devastatingly beautiful. It's said that they're even ranked as the top 10 beauties of the school of legalism. None of them are married yet. This time, many factions and families have come, and the younger generations all want to see them. Some are even begging for marriage. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Shang Yin suddenly felt like he had become a matchmaker. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He looked at Shang Yin and licked his lips. There are 10 beauties? Really? Are they all devastatingly beautiful? Of course, they are all devastatingly beautiful. Shang Yin nodded affirmatively. He looked at the kid's shining eyes. He seemed to be a bit lecherous. Young people really couldn't escape from the word lust. This is difficult. How am I supposed to choose if they are all devastatingly beautiful? Du Xiaofu suddenly had a headache. It's okay. If you really want, I can arrange for you to marry one of the 10 beauties. Just choose the one you like the most. Shang Yin's old face was embarrassed. He felt like he was a pimp at this moment. This kid could like anything, but he was so lecherous. As a cultivator, shouldn't he be more interested in cultivation? However, if he could let this kid stay in legalism, it would be worth it. Du Xiaofu shook his head and said to Shang Yin, This won't do. If I only choose one, what about the other 9? They will be disappointed. I am so outstanding, I shouldn't only belong to one. Elder, can I marry all of them? You want to marry all of them? Shang Yin's old face twitched. He looked at Du Xiaofu with a dry throat. This little bastard. Shang Yin cursed in his heart. What did this kid think the top 10 beauties of legalism were? Not to mention the top 10 beauties, even the women of legalism were not qualified to be touched by outsiders. If he could make this kid stay in legalism and focus on legalism in the future, it wouldn't be a problem to marry one of them. But now, this kid had opened his mouth and wanted to marry all 10 beauties. How big was his appetite? If word got out, legalism would lose a lot of face. Looking at Shang Yinlao's troubled expression, Du Xiaofu made a heartache and said, If 10 isn't enough, then 9 is fine too. How about 8? 7? 7 is the minimum. 6 is the bottom line. 5, but 5 is too little. We've arrived. In front of us is the core area of legalism. Normally, only the core disciples of legalism can enter. Shang felt as if he had been pardoned. He had finally reached his destination and no longer needed to be tortured. There was no way he could continue chatting with that brat. Du Xiaofu followed Shang Yin's gaze and saw an ancient city in front of them. It seemed to be standing on top of a vast mountain that had been severed. The ancient city was tall and majestic, with a majestic aura. Looking at it from afar, it seemed to be floating in the sky. It was so vast and magnificent that it made people feel insignificant. The ancient city was so huge that one couldn't see the end. The energy of heaven and earth overflowed like mist. Mother, sister, are you inside? Du Xiaofu looked at the majestic ancient city and shouted in his heart. Du Xiaofu had agreed to come to the core area of legalism because he wanted to see if he could see his mother and sister. The demonic beast mount landed at the foot of the mountain, and Shangyin led Du Xiaofu up the city. Even the elders of legalism couldn't easily fly over here. That was disrespectful to the ancestors of the clan. Greetings, 8th Elder. Along the way, the disciples of legalism bowed one after another. All of them had extraordinary temperaments and were extraordinarily charming. Is he the guy called the War God? He's a fierce person. I heard that he fused 3 spiritual lightnings and defeated second brother. All the people of the clans were defeated and lost a lot of treasures. Now, they are all with him. He has dozens of treasures on him. In the city, countless disciples of legalism looked at the back of the battle suit from afar and pointed at it. Their expressions were very complicated, but no one dared to look down on it. Even Han Xianran, who was known as the number 1 of the younger generation of legalism, was defeated. Although that arrogant guy was arrogant, he was definitely qualified to be arrogant. In this world where strength was respected, strength was everything. It was the same in legalism. All the people of the clans are here. The dragons, phoenixes, demon vultures, and the descendants of the demon realm are here. Shang Yin brought Du Xiaofu to an ancient courtyard. The surroundings were flowing with mist and multicolored light. It was a treasure land that ordinary people couldn't set foot in. It's that guy. Why is he here? The people of the clans saw Du Xiaofu from afar. Suddenly, many people rushed out and looked at him from afar. They were surprised to see that guy here. He is valued by legalism, Qi Jiajun said from afar. His heart was in pain. He was thinking about how to take back the infinite glorious star spear. If he lost the infinite glorious star spear this time, he would be too ashamed to go back. Little friend, you can rest here first. Tomorrow morning, someone will come to pick you up and take you to the martial-proof platform. Regardless of tomorrow's result, little friend, you will be a distinguished guest of legalism. Shang Yin said, and arranged a secluded ancient courtyard for Du Xiaofu. There were many servants waiting at the side. Shang Yin was going to leave. He didn't want to be entangled by this kid anymore. Elder Shang, can I walk around? Du Xiaofu asked Shang Yin. Yes, I will arrange someone to show you around. Without leaving a trace, Shang Yin nodded and didn't refuse. I think a few of the 10 beauties should just come and accompany me. Don't tell me the school of legalism doesn't even have the slightest bit of sincerity? Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Shang Yin with a perverted look. Okay. Shang Yin was stunned for a moment. In the end, he reluctantly nodded. Not long after, 2 stunning beauties arrived. They slowly walked over, causing uproar and screams. It's Han Luoyu and Li Mi. Why are they here? 2 of the 10 beauties. Why are they here? Both of them were 24 or 25 years old. On the left side, their hair was in a bun. Their eyes were bright and beautiful. They were elegant and charming. The one on the right side was like a crane. She was graceful and elegant. She had a smooth jade face and a graceful appearance. Many people followed them all the way to the courtyard where Du Xiaofu was. Their eyes were filled with infatuation. Both of them had some resentment on their faces. It seemed that they had suffered some grievances before coming here. Why are there only 2 of you? Are you the 10 beauties? You can barely be considered beauties. Du Xiaofu came out, looked at the 2 women in front of him, and gave an evaluation. Obviously, he thought that they were too few. You? Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the beautiful and charming woman on the left was about to get angry. What did he mean by only 2? How could he say that they could only be considered beauties? That guy was too hateful. The woman on the right stopped the woman on the left. Then she looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile and said, "My name is Han Luoyu. This is Sister Li Mi. The eighth elder asked us to show you around." "Did the eighth elder only tell you this? Didn't he tell you that if I am satisfied, I will marry you?" Du Xiaofu asked the two women, puzzled. Du Xiaofu's words were very loud and immediately spread. "What? That guy wants to marry Han Luoyu and Li Mi. That guy wants to marry too." And the eighth elder agreed. Suddenly, many young people around were heartbroken and couldn't stand still. "Zhang Wanzheng, aren't you interested in Han Luoyu? It seems that your fiancé is going to marry someone else." Haha. In the distance, someone laughed. He was Hui Mutyin. He could see that Zhang Wanzheng had been thinking about the legalism's Han Luoyu. Chapter 1553. In the distance, Zhang Wanzheng from the school of vertical and horizontal had an ugly and gloomy expression. Ever since he met Han Luoyu, he had been pursuing her, but he hadn't succeeded yet. Now that he saw Han Luoyu standing in front of that guy, he already felt like he was meeting an enemy. After being ridiculed by Hui Mutyan, his expression became even more gloomy. "You're shameless. None of us will marry you." Li Mi was panting with anger. She was one of the 10 beauties of legalism. Not only was she pursued by the legalism youths, but she was also pursued by the youths of the other 8 families. But now, this brat actually wanted to marry the 2 of them. He even wanted to hug them left and right. How could she stand it? Han Luoyu was also very speechless right now. Although the 8th elder did not say it explicitly, she could tell what he was trying to say. He wanted the young man to stay in the school of legalism as much as possible. Even if he wanted them to get married, the clan would agree. With his talent, the family didn't want to miss out on him. They wanted to keep him in an important position. Originally, a person who could defeat her second brother, Han Xinran, wouldn't be wronged. Today, they also saw that guy on the martial proof stage. He was handsome and had a good temperament. However, after hearing this young man's words, Han Luoyu couldn't bring herself to smile. Du Xiaofu said seriously, "Wrong. Not the 2 of you. The 8th elder promised at least 6 of you. He wants me to marry 6 of your so-called 10 beauties." "What? That guy wants to marry 6 of the 10 beauties?" And the 8th elder promised. When the surrounding legalism youths heard this, they were shocked and their hearts shattered. Legalism is trying to seduce. In the distance, Qi Jiajun curled his lips and raised his eyebrows. Looks like legalism is really going to make a move. They're going to put in a lot of effort. In the distant pavilion, Huang Ling smiled as she watched from afar. That brat isn't weak. If Sister Ling is willing to fight, I reckon that legalism's 10 beauties combined won't be his match. In the pavilion, a beautiful woman with a devilish smile said to Huang Linger. Huang Linger faintly smiled without a single speck of dust. She revealed an indescribably ethereal smile and said, "If Big Sister Honi wants to, then the 10 beauties of legalism would be even more unstoppable. If we can bring Big Sister Honi back to the demon realm, then it would be quite nice." "Haha," the girl giggled. The saint child rose and fell gracefully as she said, "If I bring him back to the demon realm, I'm afraid legalism will suffer a great loss this time." "You want to marry 6?" In front of the courtyard, Li Mi was stunned. Her eyes widened as she stared at Du Xiaofu. She then stomped her foot and scolded, "In your dreams, don't even think about marrying any of them. The 8th elder has promised me. If you don't want to, you can go to the 8th elder." Du Xiaofu raised his head and said nonchalantly, "Anyway, it's 6 out of 10. They might not necessarily marry you." "You?" Li Mi's cheeks puffed up. This guy actually dared to say that he didn't like her. This was too much. "Little sister Li Mi, don't be angry. This war god friend is only joking." Han Luoyu smiled and comforted Li Mi. The 8th elder had told him that he had to keep this young man in the school of legalism. However, the school of legalism would probably not agree to him marrying 6 women. He was just playing around. "I'm not joking," Du Xiaofu said in a serious manner. "I'll take you around then. Legalism is very big and has many beautiful places." Han Luoyu smiled and wanted to change the topic. "Are there any secret realms or treasure grounds that I can visit?" Du Xiaofu asked. Han Luoyu smiled and said, "If you stay in legalism in the future, then you can visit all of those places. We don't have enough time today, so we can go to other places first. Okay, I'll let the 6 of you accompany me in the future. Du Xiaofu nodded with a serious look on his face. In your dreams. Li Mi gritted her teeth and said with hatred. Han Luoyu looked at the surrounding people and didn't want to continue this topic. She pulled Li Mi and Du Xiaofu away. You two have to stay close to me. We need to cultivate our relationship first. Du Xiaofu said seriously and followed them. He directly ran between the 2 girls and hugged them in each arm, his hands unceremoniously placed on their slender waists. Crack, crack. At this scene, the surrounding youths seemed to hear the sound of their hearts breaking. Pervert. In the distance, Li Mi and Han Luoyu immediately dodged, but they couldn't get rid of Du Xiaofu. Under countless hateful gazes, his back gradually disappeared. The ancient city seemed to have been passed down from the ancient times. Everywhere was filled with ancient model traces. Many places were beautiful and pleasant. Du Xiaofu was led by Han Luoyu, and Li Mi everywhere they went. The place was bustling with people pointing and discussing. There were even young geniuses following behind him all along the way. They seemed to be supervising because they were afraid that they, Han Luoyu, and Li Mi would be taken advantage of by that fellow. When they saw that fellow taking advantage of them all along the way, the hearts of those young geniuses couldn't help but bleed. Good cabbages have all been taken by pigs. All the young geniuses beat their chests and stomped their feet. They felt extremely pained and their hearts were bleeding without end. What are the names of the 10 beauties of legalism? Is the true strongest in the younger generation of legalism the fellow that's going to challenge me on the martial-proof platform tomorrow? Is there really no one that's more beautiful or stronger? All along the way, Du Xiaofu was constantly cursed by Li Mi, and she didn't have the time to ask some questions. But unfortunately, the final result caused Du Xiaofu to be slightly disappointed. He didn't get any information that he wanted. Du Xiaofu also didn't meet the person he wanted to see as he strolled around the ancient city. Moreover, it was still early today, but there were no more battles on the martial-proof platform. After more than 10 shocking battles, who would dare to go up and embarrass themselves? For the various clans, the representatives of the various clans had all suffered a crushing defeat. The remaining people didn't have the mood to go up and fight. The countless spectators in the surroundings had already left long ago. They were waiting for tomorrow's battle on the martial-proof platform. It was very difficult for other people's battles to arouse their interest. The ancient city was vast. Du Xiaofu didn't come back until dusk. Anyway, it won't be long before we get married. Why don't you guys stay tonight? We can study cultivation together. The type of male and female dual cultivation. We can even sleep on the same bed. Go to hell. I hope that brothering Mo will ravage you tomorrow. Li Mi interrupted Du Xiaofu's words and turned to leave without looking back. She had endured enough today. That fellow was simply a bastard. Others admired and respected her with a graceful demeanor, but this fellow was a hooligan and a bastard. Rest early. Han Luoyu bowed and smiled. She was much more polite than Li Mi. You guys don't like studying male and female dual cultivation and don't like sleeping on the same bed. We can still discuss life together and discuss our ideals. If you want to leave, don't all leave. Leave. Sigh. Du Xiaofu stood outside the gate of the courtyard. He was very reluctant and disappointed. After a while, he sighed helplessly and entered the courtyard. That fellow is too arrogant. I really hope that brothering Mo will ravage him tomorrow. The legalism youths who were watching from afar also began to disperse. They were all hateful and the atmosphere was very tense. At night, the stars were bright and the moon was dim. At the peak of the mountain, vast clouds and mist rose, auspicious and sacred. In the ancient mottled stone pavilion surrounded by lush greenery, a young man stood with his hands behind his back. His light purple hair fluttered in the wind. You lost your composure today. The purple-haired young man spoke. His voice was very calm. It was so calm that there was no fluctuation in his tone. Yes, I lost my composure. Behind the purple-haired young man, Han Shinran's face was pale. He raised his eyes slightly and said to the purple-haired young man, I didn't expect that I couldn't defeat him even if I fought personally. He is very strong. He is indeed very strong. He is stronger than I thought. He is also very bold. I was wondering why he didn't come with his personality. So that's why. The purple-haired young man raised his eyebrows slightly. On his handsome face, there was a pair of cold eyes that made people look at him. It was as if he was an Azura looking at the moonlit night. You know who he is? Han Shinran was surprised. I'm afraid that I'm not the only one who knows. There should be some others who have guessed it. The purple-haired young man's tone was still as calm as ever. He said softly, I'm just curious. A person who doesn't even have a heart can still reach this step. Is there really anyone in this world who can't die? It makes me curious. You mean he is due? Han Shinran's body trembled violently. The purple-haired young man said softly, After all, he has the blood of my aunt in him. He rose in the outside world. But he shouldn't have come. Chapter 1554. Rumble. The collapse of the divine diagram was like a world falling. In an instant, it drowned the void and brought the whole world into this terrifying world. It made people feel as if they had passed through time and space and entered another world. In this world, everything was under Haningma's control. That was his domain, his world, and he was the ruler of everything. What a terrifying Haningma! His magic power is like nature itself, perfectly fused together. His attack is much stronger than Han Shinran's full strength. The representatives of the various clans, the dragons, Longwu, and Huangling, of the Phoenix clan suddenly exclaimed and turned pale with fright. Haningma's cultivation was actually so terrifying. His attack was so terrifying. Du Xiaofu's expression also changed slightly. This Haningma was indeed very strong. This was Du Xiaofu's evaluation, but he was only very strong. Rumble. Du Xiaofu made his move, directly activating the silver-gold lightning giant tree. It appeared in that world, towering and sprouting. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Thunder clouds rolled, and explosions were endless. 3 types of spiritual lightning, the mysterious spiritual root, and the power of the mysterious incomplete cultivation technique. Du Xiaofu merged into one, bringing along a terrifying supreme aura that swept out. Rumble. On the martial-proof platform, explosions were endless. Bright light shone, as if a world was also exploding. Runes were shattered and reborn, and space was shattered and restored. The silver-gold lightning giant tree was crushed by that world, but then the lightning giant tree took root and sprouted again, endlessly, and even devoured a part of the energy for its own use. That world was vast, crushing everything, including the lightning giant tree, wanting to suppress it. Countless ferocious beasts roared inside, and there were even the roars of dragons, tigers, phoenixes, and turtles. It was very mysterious, and its attack power was incomparably terrifying. The confrontation between the two was direct and simple. In an instant, the space on the martial-proof platform exploded, as if the blazing sun was being torn apart. Oh my God, it's too terrifying. That terrifying collision, just the power that spread out, made the surrounding creatures crawl and tremble, all of their hairs standing on end. If an ordinary expert who had just ascended to the domain realm were to be affected by that terrifying power, he or she would be instantly destroyed and his or her divine soul would be destroyed. He's really strong, to be able to fight Brothering Imo to this extent. Li Mi's eyes flickered as she sighed in her heart. Although she somewhat disliked that arrogant brat, at this moment, she had no choice but to admit that the arrogant brat was indeed terrifyingly powerful. Boom! The power of the spell condensed into a world, but it was still unable to suppress the giant lightning tree. Haningma's expression changed slightly, and at the same time, his hair trembled. That world became even more resplendent. Then, the dazzling vortex spun and turned into a bottomless, boundless, and terrifying vortex filled with chaos chi. The vortex descended from the 9 heavens, intending to devour the lightning tree and Du Xiaofu as well. Du Xiaofu raised his head and formed a hand seal. With a wave of his hand, the silver-gold lightning tree turned into a long spear. Sizzle! It was the condensation of the 3 types of spiritual lightning and the mysterious spiritual root. The long spear gathered tens of thousands of lightning bolts, like silver-gold lightning pythons lingering around it, and runes erupted. Finally, the long spear soared into the sky like a flying dragon. The long spear was accompanied by rolling thunder, and it directly pierced into the vast vortex. Rumble. At this moment, the space on the Marshall-proof platform exploded, and the vast vortex exploded continuously. In the rumbling sound, the vortex exploded one after another. Cold. The runes were destroyed, and countless broken electric arcs scattered in all directions, drowning the vast space. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled incessantly. Then, everything disappeared, including the long spear and the vortex. Only the two youths on the Marshall-proof platform were standing in the air, their robes and hair fluttering in the wind. It seems like it's a draw. In the shocking collision, the surrounding people regained their senses, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Especially Han Shinran and the experts of the Han family. They could not believe that the arrogant youth was actually able to fight Han Ma to a draw. The eyes of the legalism elders in the distance were filled with dazzling light, and their faces changed as their hearts rose and fell. Han Ma stood in the air, his skin was crystal clear, and there were strange runes flashing on the surface of his body, flowing with a mysterious power. His indifferent eyes were black and white. However, his eyes were cold and locked onto Du Xiaofu's body. He said calmly, "You indeed have the strength to defeat Han Shinran. His defeat is not unjust. You will also lose. I am invincible." Du Xiaofu was just Han Ma. His indifferent eyes carried a kind of arrogance and disdain, and his calm tone carried a kind of contempt, which made Du Xiaofu feel very uncomfortable in his heart. Invincible, that requires true strength, and you are far from enough. There are some existences in this world that are beyond your imagination. Han Ma said calmly, looking at Du Xiaofu, "Since you're here, why are you hiding? You should not exist in this world. You should have died back then. But why are you still alive? Could it be that you want to prove something? I respect life, so I will give you a chance to let you know that from the beginning to the end, no matter how strong you are in the outside world, you are just a weak existence in the outside world. You are the bloodline abandoned by the legalism, not worthy to exist in the bloodline of the legalism. You will pollute the bloodline of the legalism, and you are destined to die. Don't you think so?" Han Ma's indifferent words were very calm. His words spread throughout the surroundings, causing countless disciples of the legalism to be puzzled, and some even could not understand the coldness in his words. Swoosh, swoosh. But at this moment, from the legalism, countless old people's gazes suddenly fell on Du Xiaofu, and there were many hidden auras that descended. Han Shinran, Qinjia, Li Chuya and the others' gazes also suddenly changed, and they looked directly at the young man in battle robes in the void above the Marshall-proof platform. In the end, I was exposed. Du Xiaofu was in the air, looking at Han Ma, and there was a light in the depths of his eyes, and a faint golden light began to surge. "What's wrong? Is it strange? Are you surprised that I know?" Han Ma smiled faintly and said, "You hid very well, and should have the magical power to change your appearance, but your personality will not change. I guess that you would definitely come. You dual cultivate martial arts and talisman masters, but so do I. The presence of the spiritual root in the power of your soul is very well hidden, but that's the heavenly soul spiritual root of my school of legalism. No matter how you try to hide it, you won't be able to escape my detection. So, your so-called war god is the abandoned bloodline of the legalism. You came back this time to find an opportunity to prove yourself. If you want to step into the legalism, then you have to show me enough strength to satisfy me, or you will always be faced with contempt and disdain. Now, I can give you this opportunity, a chance to fight with me with all your strength, but in the end, you may be very miserable, and you may not have it tomorrow. Of course, you can refuse, but once you refuse, you can piss off back to where you came from. Don't ever set foot in my school of legalism again. As for your other debts, someone will come and settle them with you when the time comes. As for me, I can't be bothered to attack you today." Chi. When Han Ma's voice fell, the countless gazes of the entire square stopped on Du Xiaofu. Could he be? Many people had already guessed the reason, and were shocked, in disbelief, and even doubtful. If it's possible, I don't want to set foot in the school of legalism at all. You know very well whether I want to come, or whether the school of legalism has gone to such great lengths to invite me back. As for the abandoned bloodline of the legalism, how laughable is that? My father is Du Tingxian, and I am a descendant of the Du family. I am even a descendant of the golden-winged Great Rock clan, but I have nothing to do with the legalism, and I do not care to have anything to do with the legalism. Because I am Du Xiaofu, the Rock Emperor of the Barren Country, the Demon King Du Xiaofu. As his voice came out, Du Xiaofu's voice became louder and louder. When he finally finished speaking, the sound waves were like the explosion of heavenly thunder, echoing around the square and engulfing the entire legalism. It shook the eardrums of everyone, and it caused the hearts and souls of countless people to tremble. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's face wriggled, and his limbs and bones began to change. His facial muscles contracted and changed, and the surface of his body was covered with runes. Then, under the astonished gazes of all around, the young man in battle armor began to change. His figure became taller and more slender, and his handsome face had a kind of fortitude and determination. His eyes were clear, and his black hair danced behind his head. At this moment, runes filled the air, and the young man in battle armor floated in the air, revealing his true appearance, and appeared in the legalism. He once again came to the legalism, and with an unstoppable momentum, he domineeringly swept away the young representatives of the dragons and the 9 great clans, and with an incomparably arrogant attitude, he stepped onto the martial-proof stage. He was the Rock Emperor of the Barren Country, the Demon King Du Xiaofu. Chapter 1555. It's really him. Huang Linger of the Phoenix clan and Ninefold Spirit of the Buddhist clan both changed their expressions. Their hearts couldn't help but tremble violently. They were originally guessing that the war god was similar to him and had a familiar demeanor. And now, that familiar young man had appeared on the martial-proof platform. It's him, Demon King Du Xiaofu. Among the 8 great families, Zhou Yu and many others had seen the Demon King Du Xiaofu in the Tianhuang continent. Now that they saw him again, they couldn't help but change their expressions. It was actually that ferocious fellow. Is he the person little sister Muhan mentioned? Mo Junyu of the Mo family looked at the resolute youth on the martial-proof stage. Her eyes flickered with light. Very beautiful. No wonder. At this moment, Zhou Yu of the Farmers clan and Mo Junyu of the Mo family also understood. No wonder they felt that Guy had held back yesterday. Everyone was heavily injured, and only they weren't. So it was that ferocious fellow who had held back secretly. Is he the person Big Sister mentioned? The Qi family of the Yin-Yang family's starlight battle robe fluttered. On his handsome face, he looked at the youth on the martial-proof stage and began to carefully size him up. It's him. It's that brat. It's Du Xiaofu. Back then, he even dug out his heart. He's actually still alive. What a miracle. It's him. That ferocious brat is actually still alive. At the same time, the disciples of the legalism school all exclaimed. Especially the younger generation, many of them revealed a look of shock and fear. Back then, that ferocious fellow only had that little bit of strength, but he had already started a massacre in the legalism school, severely injuring countless of his peers. Later on, in the outside world, dozens of legalism's younger generation were killed by him. And now, the war god who had swept through the 9 great families, trampled on the dragons, and defeated Han Qianran, who was known as the number 1 of the younger generation of legalism, was actually the ferocious demon king, Du Xiaofu. This couldn't help but cause the countless gazes in the surroundings to fluctuate intensely. At this moment, the gazes of the many old people in legalism and the many hidden auras all enveloped the martial-proof platform, causing ripples and waves to surge. Bastard, it really is that brat. In the crowd, Qing Yu and Chen Xiong's expressions were especially ugly. Chen Xiong was even more gloomy. He was the one who brought that brat into legalism, but he did not realize that the brat was actually Du Xiaofu. To him, this was a slap in the face, causing his face to burn. Is he the legendary one? Some of the legalism disciples who had heard of the rumors were astonished and curiously sized them up. Who exactly is that brat? Why does he look so similar to Miss Xiaojing? Legalism was vast. How big was it? At this moment, there were also people who did not know the inside story and were astonished, not knowing Du Xiaofu's identity. Holy shit, Demon King Du Xiaofu. That guy is actually the Demon King Du Xiaofu. No wonder. So it's the Demon King Du Xiaofu. Above Kyushu, besides him, who else could sweep through the 9 great families? Yu Bufan, Mu Yumming and the others exclaimed, their eyes almost popping out. So the so-called war god was actually the Demon King Du Xiaofu. In any case, you still have a trace of my Han family's bloodline in your body. You did not disappoint me. Han Ningma looked at Du Xiaofu. His expression was still indifferent as he said, but an abandoned bloodline will always be abandoned. It should not be left in this world to insult our legalism. Brother Imo will personally deal with that brat today. That brat's strength is indeed not weak. It's astonishing. He also has an illustrious reputation in the outside world. It's said that he has founded a country and declared himself the emperor. But today, he met Brother Imo. His end will be very miserable. That bastard killed so many of our brothers. We must not let him go. After the legalism disciples recovered from their shock, some of them began to reveal a cold expression. Don't worry, Brother Imo will make a move. He's dead for sure. No matter how strong that brat is, he's definitely not Brother Imo's opponent. Many young men and women were discussing with cold eyes. It's actually him. Li Mi and Han Luoyu's beautiful faces also changed. With their status in the family, they naturally heard a lot of things and also knew a lot of inside information. Therefore, they knew the young man in battle clothes better than ordinary people. Legalism's bloodline abandoned by legalism. Do you think the legalism's bloodline is noble? I've killed a lot of legalism people. Even now, they can't withstand a single blow from me. Is this your noble bloodline? Is this where your sense of superiority comes from? At this moment, under the gaze of countless people, Du Xiaofu looked at Han Ningma with a sneer on his face, revealing a bit of disdain and ridicule. Every one of you can't withstand a single blow. With this kind of bloodline, you dare to be arrogant in front of me. I really don't know where your sense of superiority comes from. Your ancestors of legalism have lost all face because of you. Even I feel ashamed for you. If your ancestors of legalism were still alive and saw that their descendants were all trash but still thought they were extraordinary, I'm afraid they would be so angry that they couldn't wait to slap you bunch of trash to death. When these words came out, how ear-piercing and ridiculing was it? It was like a sharp knife piercing one's body. Even for the elders and experts of legalism, it was like a crisp slap to the face. Ha! But when these words fell into the ears of the other 8 families and the dragons, they couldn't help but smile. Legalism's face had been slapped. The entire legalism's face had been slapped swollen today. This bastard. He's gone too far. Kill him. Brother Ingma, you have to kill this bastard. After a moment of silence, the young men and women of legalism began to loudly shout and raise their arms. Am I wrong? Aren't you all a bunch of trash that can't withstand a single blow? If you want to kill me, then come at me if you have the ability. Besides relying on your ancestors, what else do you have? If trash like you go out, I don't even need to do anything. My peers in the desolate country will slaughter you like dogs. Du Xiaofu looked around at the legalism disciples who were shouting. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his voice was like thunder, crushing everything in its path and resounding endlessly. If we don't kill that brat today, it will be the disgrace of legalism. We have to kill that brat. Let's go together and destroy him. When the young man and woman from the school of legalism, who had been the most boisterous, heard those words, they became especially ear-piercing. Their faces reddened as their eyes shone with coldness. Some of them clenched their fists and bit their lips so hard that blood flowed out. They had never been humiliated like this before. The faces of the old men and experts from the school of legalism all twitched. Their faces were very ugly. Du Xiaofu's words had directly slapped them down. Sigh. Huang Ling smiled helplessly. She understood this savage guy's temper. Legalism had really found the wrong person to shout in front of. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had already been exposed. Today was probably not going to end peacefully, so there was no need for him to hold back. Du Du Xiaofu had always been determined that one day, he would become one of the most powerful experts in the world and suppress the school of legalism. Han Ma was the true number one of the legalism's younger generation. A battle with him was unavoidable, and it was also a process of him becoming stronger. Since he had met him now, there was no way to avoid it. There was no need for him to hold back, and he might as well fight. If he couldn't even deal with Han Ma, then how could he become one of the strongest experts in the world, and how could he suppress legalism? At this moment, Du Xiaofu was absolutely not afraid. Du Xiaofu had honed himself all the way to where he was today. He had experienced hardships and exhaustion, and he had even almost lost his life. But when had he ever been afraid? I have to say, you're too arrogant. At this moment, Han Ma's calm gaze finally began to fluctuate, and his expression began to change. Du Xiaofu looked straight at Han Ma and shook his head. His gaze was firm and sharp, and he slowly said, "What I said is the truth. Because of you, I've been through countless hardships, experienced countless dangers, and was covered in blood. I've also been through seas of fire and mountains of knives, and narrowly escaped death several times. So, in front of me, you won't have any superiority." Hearing this, Han Ma unexpectedly nodded his head, but then looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Do you think I'm a flower in a greenhouse? I've cultivated for 30 years, experienced countless hardships, and experienced countless dangers. I've also bathed in rivers of blood and been on the brink of death. The disciples of the 9 great families, you ordinary people can't be compared to them. As a true disciple of the 9 great families, I've cultivated even harder and have sacrificed far more than ordinary people. Do you think you can nurture a true expert with just the resources you have? Even if the people from the outside world have countless resources, how many of them can actually achieve anything in the end? To you people from the outside world, you only see gorgeous resources, but have you ever paid attention to the amount of effort that surpasses yours?" Han Ma's voice paused for a moment, and he looked at Du Xiaofu with a faint sneer and said, "So, in front of me, all your so-called hardships are not enough. In the end, you can only kneel before me, because I'm Han Ma of legalism, and you're just a descendant of legalism." As Han Ma's last word fell, the runes on his body suddenly rushed into the sky, and the heavens and earth suddenly trembled. The entire martial-proof platform shook, and his purple hair swayed. His body flowed with holy light, and mist filled the air. The mysterious runes on his talisman lingered, emitting a purple mist, and a light mist rose from the heavens and earth. Boom! At this moment, the heavens and earth changed color, and an endless aura surged. Ayo! A dazzling 5-clawed true dragon rose up. It was a living creature, a true dragon, and it coiled in the air, crossing the heavens, and a terrifying true dragon aura descended. From Han Ma's body, a world surged out once again. This world was far more tyrannical than the world that Han Ma had activated before. There were stars revolving, mountains and rivers flowing, and mountains connecting together. There were tens of thousands of beasts jumping around, and spiritual birds flapping their wings. Rumble. When this world appeared, the entire legalism surged, and the color changed. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and the tides rose and thunder exploded. This is Han Ma's true magic power. He activated his martial vein and vein spirit. He cultivated both the martial path and talisman path, and he even activated the legalism heavenly soul spiritual root. He's so powerful, so terrifying. In the crowd, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and a vast aura collapsed. Qi Jiajun, Long Wu, Heng Qi, Su Lingzi, and the others were also trembling. This was Han Ma's true power, and it was extremely terrifying. Purple light flowed in the heavens, and mysterious runes descended, as bright as divine fire. At this moment, in that world, Han Ma stood on the true dragon, his purple hair and robes fluttering in the wind. He looked down on all living things, and he had a terrifying aura and a posture that could suppress billions of living things. Du Xiaofu, the current you is nothing in front of me. Han Ma spoke, and with a wave of his hand, the world around him collapsed, and as if it was causing the universe to revolve, the qi of heaven and earth seeped out, and that world seemed to be evolving into reality. Ao, ao. The true dragon roared, and the dragon's roar did not stop. It rose up and tore the space, and the sound shook the surroundings. All of this turned into a destructive force, and when it descended, the space suddenly collapsed, and pitch-black spatial cracks densely covered the surroundings. Then, under countless shocked and trembling gazes, that world directly crushed Du Xiaofu in an unstoppable manner and directly enveloped him. Brothers, today's update ends here. Don't scold me. I woke up early in the morning, and it's been almost a day since the exam. I didn't sleep much last night, and now I'm really tired. I'll take a nap first, and tomorrow there will be a third, or at least a sixth, update for everyone. Let me sleep first, and then I'll work hard. I reckon that when this plot ends, you guys will definitely want to ruthlessly suppress me. Heh. Chapter 1556. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu was enveloped and crushed by Han Yingma's world. Not good. Will he explode from the pressure? At this moment, even though they knew how powerful the Demon King Du Xiaofu was, Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the rest couldn't help but be on tenterhooks. Mo Junyu, Zhou Yu, Zhang Yunfeng, Qi Jiejun, and the rest were also trembling. Under Han Yingma's terrifying magical technique, they knew that they couldn't resist it at all. Han Yingma's strength made them, who were proud of themselves, admit from the bottom of their hearts that they couldn't resist and resist. In the terrifying world, Han Yingma dominated everything. The stars revolved, the mountains and rivers were majestic, and the mountains were connected. Beasts roared, spiritual birds flapped their wings, and true dragons soared through the sky. All of this was so shocking. The magical technique was one, and it was as if it was formed by nature, crushing everything. This is Brother Yingma's strength. No one in the same generation can compare to him. The eyes of countless legalism disciples trembled. Their blood boiled, and their gazes were blazing. This was the true leading figure of their legalism. He was so powerful that he could sweep through the world and look down on the world. Han Yingma was the true #1 person in the younger generation of legalism. He was one of the most powerful monsters hidden behind legalism. His strength had long surpassed many of the elders in legalism. At this moment, under that terrifying pressure, all the elders and experts of legalism revealed smiles and shock. Han Yingma's strength was the hope of legalism. Everyone's eyes were trembling. Everyone's gazes were focused on that world, and they were terrified for Du Xiaofu. Under that terrifying pressure, even the heavens and earth were about to collapse. Would the Demon King Du Xiaofu be directly crushed in that terrifying world? However, Du Xiaofu wasn't. He was enveloped by that world. At that moment, purple lightning talismans quietly covered Du Xiaofu's body. In an instant, an unprecedentedly powerful aura swept out from Du Xiaofu's body as if it was covering the sky and earth. Boom! Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Dark clouds rolled and the sky changed color. It was as if doomsday had arrived. A vast aura suddenly swept out in all directions. An aura emanated from Du Xiaofu's body. This aura was extremely powerful, and it was filled with the aura of execution. This aura didn't carry any murderous intent, but it displayed the majesty of creation and the righteousness of the world. It was capable of sweeping through the heavens and punishing all living things. Under that kind of murderous aura, all living beings in the surroundings trembled in their bodies and their souls. Du Xiaofu moved in the world of terrifying spells. He raised his head slightly, and purple lightning runes wrapped around his body as if he was covered in a purple lightning armor. He crossed the space and ascended to the heavens with each step. Under the pressure of that terrifying world, Du Xiaofu's body began to shine. Boundless violet lightning runes erupted, and violet gold lightning condensed and spread out in all directions. Rumble. The violet lightning struck in all directions, causing the world to rumble incessantly. The violet gold lightning overflowed into the sky, as if it wanted to turn this world upside down. You are a genius of legalism. You have your own training. I walked out of the stone city. Father and son depended on each other for survival. Then, I roamed the world. You have the bloodline of legalism. You have beautiful resources, and you have also bathed in a river of blood. I have tempered myself with blood, and I have honed myself to the extreme. You think legalism is high and mighty. You look down on Kyushu and see them as mere mortals. But I have never cared for them. I don't even spare them a glance. You have always been following in the footsteps of your ancestors. You want to recreate the glory of legalism. And what I want to do is to create a great and powerful family. I want to protect my Du family for generations to come. I want to never be bullied and humiliated by others. I want to never be separated as a family. Step by step, with his head slightly raised, Du Xiaofu ascended to the sky in that small world. His eyes and voice were filled with endless determination. The tall and straight young man in battle robes crossed the mountains and rivers. The demonic beasts and spirit birds around him could not stop him. Even the mountains automatically separated. Every time he took a step in the air, the tyrannical energy fluctuation increased by a portion. The violet lightning around him undulated like a vast ocean. It was as if a purple rainbow had crossed the sky. Dazzling lightning runes surged in all directions. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the tall and straight figure that seemed to be ascending to the sky. They trembled. Every time the tall and straight young man in battle robes ascended to the sky, it was as if he was stepping on the hearts of all living beings. It was like a heavenly drum and a heavy hammer. When that determined voice entered people's ears, it made their hair stand on end for no reason. Goosebumps appeared on their bodies, and the blood in their bodies boiled. It was as if they were affected by a certain atmosphere. They were moved. Your high and mighty status comes from your bloodline of legalism. It comes from your ancestors' shadow of legalism. When have you ever truly looked at yourself directly? And my pride comes from the bones in my body. It comes from the blood flowing in my body. Because I am from a wealthy family. When Du Xiaofu's last words came out, every word and every sound was like thunder. It resounded in all directions and shook the 9 heavens. At the same time when his last words were spoken, Du Xiaofu stepped into that small world. At this moment, an incomparably tyrannical aura began to seep out from Du Xiaofu's body. It burst forth with a purplish gold light that shot in all directions. It was as if a glorious sun was about to rise in that small world. Walala! The resplendent purplish gold lightning was boundless. It was as if countless purplish gold energy ribbons were pouring down, emitting a blazing radiance. Ayo, ayo! A dragon's roar filled the 9 heavens. In that small world, the 5-clawed true dragon soared through the sky. The dragon's might surged, tearing through space and crushing all living beings. It appeared in front of Du Xiaofu with a vast aura. It was also at this moment that a huge, purplish gold rock phantom spread its wings and circled out from the blazing light around Du Xiaofu. It appeared out of thin air and soared into the sky. Gee! The purplish gold rock screeched. It pierced through the clouds and released an endless, majestic, tyrannical pressure. It spread its wings, and purplish gold lightning arcs sparkled all over its body. Its ferocious might covered the sky, as if it was going to soar into the sky and make the world tremble. Oh my God, that's the rock. Countless living beings looked up, and the huge rock appeared in their eyes. The supreme beast's might filled the air. The clouds in all directions moved, the sky changed color, and the 9 heavens shook. The appearance of the purplish gold rock phantom caused the true dragon to tremble. The purplish gold thunder rock flapped its wings and swept out. It was able to distort space. Its entire body was covered with dense purplish gold lightning arcs. In the rapidly distorting space, it finally gathered into a huge purplish gold thunderbolt that poured down. The mighty, tyrannical, and intimidating pressure swept out and finally landed heavily on the true dragon. Ayo! The true dragon roared, and the dragon's roar filled the 9 heavens. Its dragon claws tore through the sky, and the dragon's breath surged. The runes were resplendent as it rushed in all directions. Chi-la! The purplish gold rock's lightning arcs burst out, and the lightning arcs wreaked havoc in the sky. It was like a purplish gold sun in the sky, and a claw mark tore through the space. The battle between the dragon and the rock was vast and mighty. Pieces of space were exploding, and the light was so bright that it made people unable to open their eyes. Under the terrifying power, many living beings in the surroundings fell limp to the ground. In the battle between the dragon and the rock, Du Xiaofu appeared. He crossed the space and stepped on the ferocious head of the true dragon. His fist, covered with the thunder martial vein, was like a purplish-gold lightning ball as it fell heavily. The purplish-gold lightning was filled with punishment, and its aura was like that of the thunder sovereign. Rumble. Under Du Xiaofu's punch, the true dragon wailed miserably. Its eyes surged with shock, and then it directly cracked. The destructive and violent energy dispersed, turning into a dazzling lightning rune that swept out like a tidal wave. The purplish-gold thunder rock flapped its wings. Although it was a phantom, it carried the supreme beast's might and the supreme will of the real rock, and it suppressed the heaven and earth. Gee! The purplish-gold rock screeched, and its lightning eyes were like two purplish-gold suns. Its huge body in that side of the world flapped its wings, covering the heaven and earth. It crossed the sky as if it was alive, and its supreme aura was inextinguishable. Its battle intent soared into the sky, and it could suppress the ancient era. All the creatures trembled. That was a true supreme being that looked down on the world and showed disdain for the past and present. Demon King Du Xiaofu, is he a human or a real rock? The supreme beast's might was vast and mighty, and its aura was incomparable. Many creatures were unable to resist and went limp one after another. In the end, Du Xiaofu's figure merged perfectly with the gigantic supreme Pong. Standing there, he was a true golden-winged Pong. I am the sovereign of the human world. I am fierce for the demon king of the world. I am the golden-winged great rock. His voice pierced through the clouds and cracked stone, resounding throughout the world. The lightning runes turned into a rain of light, and the rock followed Du Xiaofu's demonstration of the profound mysteries, undulating up and down in the void. Legalism. So what if you have the power of magic? Break for me. When Du Xiaofu's final shout resounded, the rock spread its wings and shook. Within that world, it flapped its wings and struck the heavens, destroying one star after another, destroying countless vicious beasts and spiritual birds, collapsing mountain peaks and severing mountains and rivers. Rumble. The heaven and earth were rumbling, as if the heavens were being opened. Within the world condensed by Haunting Ma, the stars were falling, the mountains and rivers were splitting, and the peaks were collapsing. The world was collapsing and suffering destruction. This was the end of the world. All of this was caused by the golden-winged rock. That rock was destroying the heaven and earth, flapping its wings. It was a supreme being, and the scene was too shocking. Rumble. The rock struck the heavens, as if it wanted to rush out of the universe. That world was finally destroyed, and it was as if a world was being destroyed in front of everyone. The countless creatures present felt as if they were witnessing the annihilation of a century. It was as if in the blink of an eye, the world had already changed, and a century of reincarnation had passed. All the old men of legalism present stood up. Their eyes trembled, and their old bodies shook violently. Their eyes were filled with raging waves. In mid-air, many obscure auras were fluctuating violently, rising and falling like waves. Walala! Everything around them disappeared, and in the end, even the rock that crossed the world quietly disappeared. Only the young man in battle robes was still standing tall in the void. Lightning flashed around him, and purple gold lightning surged in his eyes. It was as if there were two rolling thunder seas, and the rock was rising and falling in the sea of thunder, setting off stormy waves. Puff, puff, in the void, Han Ingma's purple hair was disheveled, and his eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. From his mouth, large mouthfuls of blood were spat out. You can't even withstand a single blow. Du Xiaofu looked straight ahead, and his voice was vast and mighty, shaking the heavens. At this moment, the young man in battle robes was like a human emperor in the sky, like a demon king descending to the world, like a human-shaped rock looking down on the past and present. The supreme aura filled the air, and he looked down on the 9 heavens. Chapter 1557. Buzz. In an ancient and boundless space, purple mist rose all around. An otherworldly woman's delicate body suddenly emitted mystical purple lightning arcs that filled the air. However, there seemed to be some kind of restriction in this space that could isolate heaven and earth. Then, the purple lightning arc disappeared from her delicate body again. How can this be? Why did a martial vein suddenly appear in my body? It seems to be related to lightning. The woman's delicate body trembled, and her face was filled with doubt. Then, ripples appeared in her eyes as she muttered softly, "Brother, have you come out from the Golden Rock clan? Wait until I become an expert. I'll help you escape." Inside and outside the martial-proof platform, the surroundings were silent. All the living beings were trembling, and their eyes were dazed. No, this is impossible. How could Brother Ingemo lose? Then, the eyes of the younger generation of legalism trembled, and they were in disbelief. The young men and women of legalism clenched their fists, and their nails dug deep into their flesh, causing blood to flow out. They couldn't believe the scene in front of them. No, this can't be real. Brother Ingemo definitely won't lose. The young women of legalism shed tears, and their eyes were in a daze. He's so strong. Mo Junyu, Jiang Yunfeng, Su Lingzi, and the others were deeply shocked at this moment. They could only smile bitterly. The Demon King was so terrifying. Thinking back to 2 days ago, they still wanted to suppress him. Now that they thought about it, it was already lucky that they weren't ruthlessly trampled on that day. The guy that Big Sister likes is indeed not bad. He passed my test. Chi Jiajun curled his lips, and the shock on his face couldn't be concealed. Then, a smile appeared on his face. Chi Jiajun also understood. No wonder that guy didn't hurt him yesterday. It was because he was his future brother-in-law, and that guy didn't dare to hurt him. In the distance, all the old men and experts of legalism had solemn expressions. What kind of martial vein is that? It's too strong. I've never seen such a lightning martial vein before. The Golden Rock Supreme Beast confused with martial veins. It's so strong. Some experts of legalism exclaimed and looked at each other. That kind of strength made even them tremble. You're stronger than I expected, but I haven't lost. Han Ningma raised his head and looked at Du Xiaofu. His messy purple hair danced in the wind as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his long sleeves. His demeanor did not change at all. No matter how disheveled he was, his posture and temperament were still extraordinary. Boom. As Han Ningma's voice fell, the void above the martial arts demonstration platform began to tremble. Dazzling runes began to spread out from his body. The light was so resplendent and dazzling that no one dared to look directly at it. The terrifying aura was like an erupting volcano, causing the indestructible martial-proof platform to show signs of cracking at this moment. At this moment, the aura on Han Ningma's body began to rise violently. His power increased, and his aura skyrocketed. At the same time, the entire legalism heaven and earth had a mysterious and mighty force madly converging, descending upon the martial-proof platform and enveloping Han Ningma's body. At this moment, Han Ningma's eyes shone brightly. There was no trace of embarrassment in his eyes. Instead, he exuded an invincible confidence. Between his brows, divine light began to dance like flames. Above his forehead, rings of divine light appeared one after another. As the rings of divine light appeared one after another, Han Ningma's aura became stronger and stronger. Rumble. When the last 6 rings of divine light circled above his forehead like divine rings, a vast aura spread out from Han Ningma's surroundings. A supreme being was suppressing all living beings in the world. It was also at this moment that the entire legalism heaven and earth shook. Tides rose and fell. Heaven and earth rumbled and the ground cracked. Thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. It was a heavenly phenomenon. At this moment, countless living beings in the surroundings knelt down involuntarily. The aura that descended was simply unstoppable. Supreme Being, Han Ningma is a supreme being who has undergone nirvana. The supreme being who has undergone nirvana. Han Ningma is indeed a monster. He's too powerful. The hearts of the Qi families Jun, Mo Junyu, Heng Qi, and the others trembled. Everyone looked at Haningma on the martial-proof platform. Those 6 rings were the symbol of a supreme being who had undergone nirvana. They contained the might of heaven and earth. This result caused Emo Junyu and the others to be shocked. However, they didn't seem to be surprised. It was as if they had already received the news in advance. A supreme being who has undergone nirvana should have reached the nirvana stage. In the crowd, the girl called Hong and I by Huang Linger had ripples in her eyes. Haningma will not lose. All the elders and experts of legalism had solemn expressions. However, their eyes were filled with conviction. At this moment, they were emitting divine light. I'm a supreme being who has undergone nirvana. I'm an existence that you need to look up to. Prostrate before me and tremble for me. Haningma spoke. His body shone with resplendent light, erupting with endless light that shot into the sky. It illuminated the heavens and earth, causing them to tremble and resonate with him. At this moment, all the living beings in legalism heaven seemed to have heard the Tao voice of the 9 heavens. On the martial-proof platform, ancient runes flickered in the void around Haningma. They merged with heaven and earth, bringing with them strong gales and Tao voice resounding. All the living beings were dazzled. They were shocked and gasped in shock. At this moment, the purple-haired youth was a true supreme being. Endless might and power spread out from his feet, filling the air with strange fluctuations. Everyone was shocked. At this moment, this part of the world was sealed. Countless people around the square were affected. It was as if they were trapped and could not move. It was as if they were trapped in a swamp and could not activate their profound chi. This is the might of a supreme being who has undergone nirvana. Countless living beings looked at Haningma in shock. Everyone understood that this was caused by Haningma. The might of a supreme being who had undergone nirvana was a true supreme being that no one could resist. It's all over. Haningma attacked again. 6 resplendent divine rings began to revolve. In the end, they gathered together and formed a huge resplendent palm print. This palm print was resplendent, but it did not have any fluctuations. It just floated in front of Haningma's palm. This palm print was formed by the power of a supreme being who had undergone nirvana. It received the protection of heaven and earth and channeled the energy of heaven and earth. It gathered the power of legalism and gathered all of Haningma's comprehension in his life. In the end, it gathered into this calm palm print. This is my Tao. I'm a supreme being. I've transformed into a supreme being's palm. You shall kneel. Haningma said. He regained his indifference and activated his palm. The resplendent palm print slapped towards Du Xiaofu's head and pushed horizontally. Crack, crack. The palm print was calm. However, wherever the palm print passed, the void around the edge of the palm print collapsed. Black spatial cracks spread out in all directions, revealing countless pitch-black spatial cracks above the void and devouring the light in the sky. At this moment, on the entire martial-proof platform, within the entire legalism, it was as if there was only one palm print. It was as resplendent as the sun in the sky. The surrounding void quietly collapsed and sank into oblivion. A supreme being's palm print. I'm afraid even an ordinary great domain being would be killed. At this moment, the extraordinaires from the various families and forces exclaimed. That terrifying palm print caused many experts to be frightened out of their wits and their primordial spirits to tremble. That terrifying palm print was enough to kill an ordinary great domain being. That was the power of a supreme being. It was unparalleled. Can he still withstand it? Qi Jiejun, Emo Junyu, Zhou Yu, Zhang Yunfeng, Huang Linger, Hong and I, and the others trembled. Under that terrifying might, everyone felt small and insignificant. They couldn't help but worry for Du Xiaofu once again. Du Xiaofu calmly faced Haningma. The purplish-gold lightning arcs in his eyes became even more resplendent, and his hair fluttered in the wind. The terrifying palm print swept across the heavens and earth and instantly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. The void around Du Xiaofu was already cracking. Arrogant brat. He's going to lose in the end. Looking at the terrifying supreme being's palm that had already arrived in front of Du Xiaofu, Han Xinran, Qinjia, and the other legalism's younger generation revealed fanatical expressions. The Supreme Being's nirvana is unparalleled. At this moment, the elders and experts of legalism in the distance revealed satisfied smiles on their aged faces. Han Shinran's Supreme Being's nirvana was the hope of legalism. Du Xiaofu moved. Facing the Supreme Being's palm, he didn't retreat. Instead, he advanced and directly soared through the sky. Then, when the huge palm print was less than half a foot away from Du Xiaofu, everyone could see it. Under countless hair-raising and trembling gazes, Du Xiaofu raised his head, stood with his hands behind his back, and directly said, "Stop!" Boom! Just as Du Xiaofu's stop fell, the surrounding void seemed to tremble once again. Then, under everyone's horrified and trembling gazes, they saw that the palm of the Supreme Being, which had destroyed the void along its way, actually stopped in the space less than 5 feet away from Du Xiaofu at this moment. It instantly froze and was unable to move an inch forward. At this moment, behind the palm print, Han Ma's expression suddenly froze. The surrounding heavens and earth were dead silent at this moment. The smiles on the faces of the elders and experts of legalism froze, and their gazes were lifeless. Under the trembling gazes of all the living beings, Du Xiaofu stood with his hands behind his back. His resolute and determined face revealed a slight smile towards Han Ma, and his voice resounded in the area. Could this be the so-called Supreme Being's palm? Have you seen a real Supreme Being? His voice was calm, but it rumbled in this dead silent area. When his voice sounded, divine light spread out in front of Du Xiaofu's forehead, like a divine fire, and turned into 6 divine halos. When these 6 divine halos appeared, the entire void rumbled, like the sound of the heavens, like the beating of a heavenly drum, and fell on the hearts of all living beings, shaking them to the point that their souls were about to scatter. Within the heavens and earth, the space between heaven and earth suddenly turned pitch black, as if the heavens and earth had suddenly sunk into darkness. The ground began to shake, the mountains began to shake, and the rivers and waters began to surge with raging waves, causing everyone to tremble uncontrollably. All these changes caused one's soul to tremble. Everyone's gazes trembled. On the martial-proof platform, the young man in battle clothes, who was facing the Supreme Being's palm, was shrouded in light, and the 6 divine halos in front of his forehead were much more dazzling than Han Ma's. Nirvana Supreme Being, the Demon King Du Xiaofu is also a Nirvana Supreme Being. Oh my God, the Demon King is also a Nirvana Supreme Being. Everyone's gazes trembled fiercely. The 6 divine halos in front of the young man in battle clothes represented that he was also a Nirvana Supreme Being. He was also a Supreme Being. At this moment, countless gazes from legalism suddenly trembled fiercely. No, he has 7 divine halos. Oh my God, what's going on? Suddenly, the surrounding people exclaimed. Suddenly, countless people couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Under everyone's gazes, another divine halo quietly appeared on the 6 divine halos in front of the young man in battle clothes. 7 divine halos surrounded him like divine flames, releasing endless majestic and domineering pressure. At this moment, the young man in battle clothes was shining with divine light, like a miracle, and there was a kind of Supreme Being aura pervading the air, suppressing heaven and earth. However, it was far from over at this moment. In just a short instant, under the gazes of countless people who were at a loss for what to do and were shocked, the 8th divine ring of the 7 divine flames had started to silently appear above Du Xiaofu's forehead. Between heaven and earth, the pressure continued to increase, and under the 8 divine halos, the heaven and earth were sinking. Boom! However, the 8th divine halo appeared, and then the 9th divine halo quietly appeared. With each additional divine halo in front of Du Xiaofu's forehead, the pressure of heaven and earth in the surroundings increased by several times. Rumble. When the 9 divine halos appeared, the surrounding space was filled with heavenly sounds, and the pressure caused the heaven and earth to rumble, as if countless heavenly drums were beating at the same time, shaking the hearts of all living beings, and all of them were stunned. The 9 divine halos appeared in the sky, and the dazzling light drowned everything. At this moment, a new powerful aura spread out from Du Xiaofu's tall and straight body, and in the entire world of legalism, it was as if something had been awakened at this moment. Rumble. Legalism's world rumbled, and the earth cracked. From above the firmament, it was as if the 9 heavens had suddenly split open a huge crack, and there was a bright golden light shooting down, and a majestic aura and heavenly pressure descended. Boom, boom, boom. Dark clouds rolled, the mountains shook, and rivers and lakes surged like a tsunami. On a clear day, thunder resounded in the sky for a long time, and demonic beasts roared. At this moment, all living beings were inexplicably shocked, and they couldn't help but prostrate themselves. At this moment, in the void above the martial-proof platform, the young man in battle clothes was accompanied by vast and mighty heavenly pressure, and the terrifying pressure was about to crush heaven and earth. The nirvana of a Grand Supreme. He is the nirvana of a Grand Supreme. In legalism, an old man couldn't help but tremble and exclaim. He recognized the 9 divine halos. It was the nirvana of a Grand Supreme. The nirvana of a Grand Supreme. At this moment, in legalism, countless old men opened and closed their eyes, and divine light shot out in all directions, and they trembled. At this moment, after the Grand Supreme's palm, Haunting Ma's eyes rippled like stormy waves. Now, have you seen the real Grand Supreme? Du Xiaofu spoke. On the surface of his body, mysterious runes fluctuated. The light was gorgeous and moving, resplendent and shocking. His entire body was shining, dazzling, and mysterious. This was a true paragon. When the voice was heard, Du Xiaofu moved, and with a wave of his right hand stretched out and slightly clenched into a fist. He stretched out his index finger, and his finger lightly tapped on the frozen Grand Supreme's palm in front of him. Walala! When the finger touched, the terrifying Grand Supreme's palm was like smoke blown away by the wind, and suddenly dispersed quietly and disappeared without a trace. That light finger had destroyed Haunting Ma's Grand Supreme's palm. However, Du Xiaofu's finger also directly tapped on Haunting Ma's palm. Ka. At this moment, a monstrous and resplendent rune light appeared, and the moment the finger and palm collided, there were sparks. Then, as if Haunting Ma was struck by lightning, his palm directly cracked and shattered, and turned into countless fragments of blood mist. Then, Haunting Ma let out a blood-curdling scream and spat out blood. His entire arm was spasming, and in the last moment, his entire arm exploded from the shoulder, and his body was like a meteor, and crashed into the martial-proof stage from mid-air. Rumble, the unbreakable, indestructible runes on the martial-proof stage were shattered, and the surrounding ground of the square was also cracking, and the cracks on the ground spread out like a spider web. Haunting Ma's body was buried in the pile of rubble on the martial-proof stage. At this moment, the hearts of all the disciples of legalism were buried in the pile of rubble. The pride of all the disciples of legalism were crushed and buried together. Boom! In midair, Du Xiaofu's figure landed and stepped on the pile of rubble that buried Haunting Ma. His body was glowing, and his tall and straight figure was surging with pressure. That was the Grand Supreme, and it caused all around to prostrate on the ground. Du Xiaofu raised his head to look at the sky, and his eyes were like 2 dazzling suns that were about to rise, and the resplendent light shot straight to the sky. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu shouted loudly, and accompanied by lightning and thunder, and a majestic and mighty pressure that swept across the entire legalism. Mother, Xiao Jing, I've come to find you. Where are you? When the voice was heard, it echoed endlessly, and affected the majestic power of the heavens and earth, and like the roar of thunder, it shook the entire heavens and earth, and shook people's souls. This voice was hoarse, and when people heard it, their hearts choked, and they mourned endlessly. Chapter 1558. The voice reverberated in all directions. In the ancient space, a beautiful woman was sitting cross-legged. She looked so arrogant. Chi. Suddenly, the beautiful woman opened her eyes. The light in her eyes fluctuated, and her chest trembled in pain. Xiaofu. The beautiful woman's heart trembled. Her beautiful figure immediately flew into the sky and disappeared. Chi. In the ancient mountain range, the beautiful woman's figure appeared in midair. Third sister, where are you going? Suddenly, a gentle voice sounded. At the same time, an auspicious light appeared in the sky, accompanied by a terrifying aura that permeated the mountain range. In the light, a figure appeared. The light was so dazzling that it looked like a star. Big brother, is my son Xiaofu here? The beautiful woman asked. Her eyes were shining. Mother and son were connected. She could feel that her child was in the legalism. You only have one daughter, Xiaojing. Don't be stubborn. In the light, the voice sighed. It was a gentle voice, but when it fell on the ears, it made people's hearts tremble and their souls tremble. I'm going to see my child, the beautiful woman said. Her eyes were firm. She was sure that her other child was in the legalism. Third sister, you shouldn't be stubborn. In the light, the voice deepened and the aura rippled. Big brother, he's third sister's child. You killed him once. You dug out his heart without staining it with blood. All these years, did you really not have to worry? Now that he's miraculously alive, why are you still making things difficult for him? He's also your nephew. At this moment, a hoarse voice sounded. It resounded through the mountain range. When the voice fell, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair appeared. He wore a dark robe that looked like it had not been washed for a long time. However, one could vaguely see that under his disheveled hair was an extremely handsome face. Second brother, what's going on? What happened to my son? Hearing this, the beautiful woman's beautiful face immediately turned pale, and she immediately asked the middle-aged man with disheveled hair. The person walked towards the beautiful woman, stumbling all the way as if he was drunk. His eyes looked at the light figure in the air and said, "They sealed the news so that you wouldn't know. They also didn't dare to let you know. Our good big brother had to dig out his own beating heart with his own hands. Only then could Xiaojing's withering heart disease be cured. That child is very lucky. He didn't die and miraculously survived. Right now, he's at the martial testimony platform. He's here to find his mother, but our big brother seems to want him to die. That poor child, my poor nephew, my child." The beautiful woman's eyes were moist. Her heart was in pain. She turned back to look at the figure in the light, her eyes flashing with a cold light. Her peerless face was as cold as ice. At this moment, the sky above the entire mountain range changed color. The sky suddenly darkened as dark clouds gathered. The beautiful woman's voice was ice cold. She looked at the figure in the light and said, "Big brother, you're really cruel. Audong, you've gone too far. You have to remember that I'm your big brother." The figure in the light's aura fluctuated and his voice became stern. "You're my big brother, but if my child dies, I'll still kill you and bury him with you," the beautiful woman said, emphasizing every word. "Audong, how dare you?" When the voice spread out, the entire mountain range trembled. "If you dare to stop me again, I'll attack." The beautiful woman turned around. Her eyes were moist but firm. She wanted to leave. At this moment, her heart was in pain. She just wanted to see her child. "Third sister, go ahead. Let me see how much our big brother has improved after all these years," the drunk middle-aged man said. He looked at the figure in the light and signaled for the beautiful woman to leave. The beautiful woman left, and the beautiful figure disappeared in the air. In the sky above the mountain range, the figure in the light's aura fluctuated and spread out in all directions. But in the end, he held back and didn't attack. "My big brother, our nephew, he didn't die. He has already undergone nirvana. Your son, my nephew, Haningma, is no match for him. Are you starting to be afraid now?" "Ha ha ha ha," the drunk middle-aged man laughed. His laughter echoed endlessly. In the square around the martial-proof platform, sorrowful cries reverberated in the air for a long time. The voices moved the listeners and made them choke with sobs. "He seems to be related to legalism. Who is he?" The 8 great families, the Dragon Clan, the Phoenix Clan, and the other major forces were all staring at the young supreme being with astonishment in their eyes. The disciples of legalism were all stunned. Some of them knelt down under the pressure of the supreme being and couldn't resist. At this moment, all the disciples of legalism didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. Facing the young man in battle armor, They only felt a deep sense of powerlessness. The nirvana of a supreme being was enough to defeat all the disciples of legalism. Nirvana of a supreme being. He has undergone nirvana of a supreme being. Some of the old men of legalism trembled, their eyes shooting out divine light. Some of the old men of legalism had a complicated look. Some legalism experts were happy, some were shocked, and some were fearful. Swish. When the voice faded, Du Xiaofu expressionlessly reached out his hand and grabbed, twisting the space and directly grabbing into the pile of rubble under his feet. Golden light burst out from the claw, destroying everything. The rubble turned into powder, and the boulder cracked into ashes. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out, shrill and mournful. Then, under countless gazes, Haning Ma, who was covered in blood and had lost an arm, was grabbed by Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's claw was on Haning Ma's neck. At this moment, as long as he exerted a little force, it would be enough to destroy Haning Ma's soul. At this moment, Haning Ma's purple hair was stained with blood. He struggled for a while, but to no avail. His cold eyes were sluggish, but more than that, there was fear. As arrogant as he was, how could Haning Ma have thought that the person he regarded as an ordinary person, an ant that he didn't put in his eyes, was a supreme being that had surpassed his lesser supreme being? There was a fine line between them, but the difference between the two levels was like heaven and earth. A supreme being that had undergone nirvana was enough to completely shatter all of his confidence and pride. Du Xiaofu, what are you doing? In legalism, some of the old men came back to their senses and immediately exclaimed. The Demon King, Du Xiaofu, had already killed a lot of legalism experts. At this moment, they definitely didn't think that Du Xiaofu wouldn't dare to kill Haning Ma. However, if Haning Ma was killed, the price was something that the entire legalism couldn't afford to pay. I sincerely thank you for your tolerance and support. Xiao Yu bowed in thanks. Chapter 1559. Are you guys scared? Du Xiaofu turned his head and looked at the many legalism elders who appeared and exclaimed in surprise. His resolute face revealed a chilling intent as he said, I want to see my mother and sister, or else I will kill Haning Ma. Brat, you dare. A legalism elder appeared and his voice shook the void. You dare to be so arrogant? Old man, get lost. Du Xiaofu bellowed. Golden light shone from his body and a purple lightning swept out. It was like a lightning dragon that crossed the space and arrived in an instant. The elder's expression immediately changed. He shot out a palm print and blocked the purple lightning. However, his body was directly pushed back and blood spurted out from his mouth. Electric arcs surged on his body and his hair stood on end. He was in an extremely sorry state. Du Xiaofu, let's talk nicely. A legalism elder was calmer. He appeared and wanted to negotiate with Du Xiaofu. Haning Ma was in the hands of the Demon King. They didn't dare to make a move rashly and also didn't dare to anger the little Demon King. I want to see my mother and sister, or else I will kill Haning Ma, Du Xiaofu said. As he gazed at the increasing number of old men and experts of the school of legalism, he showed no fear. Since he had already been exposed, Du Xiaofu knew that today was destined to be a bad day. At this moment, with Haning Ma's position in the legalism, it was enough to make the legalism elders hold back. This would be his last chance. This is a small matter. Let Haning Ma go first. A legalism elder spoke and comforted Du Xiaofu, hoping to save Haning Ma first. Do you think I'm stupid? If I don't see my mother and sister within an hour, Haning Ma will die without a doubt. Who was Du Xiaofu? How could he not know the intentions of these legalism elders? If you dare to kill Haning Ma, you will also die without a doubt. A legalism elder shouted loudly. However, at this moment, a group of people were floating in mid-air. Their auras were vast and powerful, but they really didn't dare to make a move. It doesn't matter if I die. It's not like I haven't died before. I just don't know if Haning Ma has died before. Du Xiaofu roared, causing the surrounding space to tremble. The faces of the old men and experts from the school of legalism paled. At this moment, the group of legalism experts and elders looked at each other. At this moment, they felt that even though only a few years had passed, things had changed. The young man in the battle robe had grown to the point where they had to be wary of him. He was no longer the young man they regarded as an ant. "How dare you?" Suddenly, a voice resounded from high up in the sky. Many figures descended, and the halos around them were like dazzling suns, causing others to be unable to look directly at them. It caused the surrounding space to tremble, and it was as if gods had descended to the world. Then, a few old men appeared in the air. "It's the second guardian." Seeing this, many elders and powerhouses in the surroundings immediately gathered around with joy in their eyes. "Brat, do you want to die?" Among the few old men, one of them walked out and shouted loudly. His voice was like thunder that resounded through the sky. It contained endless ancient majesty that reverberated endlessly. "Old dog, it's you." Du Xiaofu recognized him. He had seen him in the void painting that his drunkard father had shown him. The old man who spoke was the ninth guardian of legalism. Not long after Du Xiaofu was born, he had almost killed him in his infancy with a palm strike. That was the first time he had escaped death. His drunkard father had also been severely injured by him. Looking around, Du Xiaofu also saw an old man. That was the second guardian of legalism. He was the one who had led people to separate his family. The ninth guardian and the second guardian seemed to be different from the guardians of legalism. Their auras and cultivation were far more powerful. At this moment, seeing these figures, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly surged with blood. Coldness shot out, causing the surrounding temperature to suddenly plummet. The ninth guardian's face was gloomy to the extreme. He looked directly at Du Xiaofu and said with killing intent, "Little bastard, I should have killed you back then. Let go of young mastering Ma. Otherwise, you will die without a burial place. You are just an old dog who has barely stepped into the martial domain realm. If I want to kill you now, it will be like stepping on an ant." Du Xiaofu opened his eyes and a cold light surged. He shouted, "Do you want me to let him go? If I don't, what can you do?" Crack. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu waved his left arm and broke Han Ningma's remaining arm. Blood spurted out and splattered on the ground. "Ah!" Han Ningma screamed and almost fainted. Unfortunately, he was restricted and suppressed by the vast power. He could not struggle at all. At this moment, the disciples of legalism trembled. Their souls were also trembling. The demon king Du Xiaofu was so cruel. Sigh. Huang Linger sighed and sighed for legalism. They did not understand that guy. When had he ever been threatened? Back then, the dragons, Dragon 9, had ended up like that. Bastard. Seeing Han Ningma screaming in pain, the 9 protectors and the other elders roared in anger, their eyes cold. "Little bastard. You will definitely die today." The ninth guardian was furious, and his killing intent surged. "Who are you calling a little bastard?" Just as the ninth guardian finished speaking, a delicate voice came from afar. When the last word was said, a beautiful figure appeared in midair. It was a beautiful woman. She was out of this world and stood proudly. When the beautiful woman's figure appeared, Du Xiaofu's gaze suddenly shook as if a bolt of lightning had surged through his heart. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's claw print on Han Ningma's neck tightened. Han Ningma's face turned red and his tongue was about to stick out. When this beautiful woman appeared, she looked directly at the 9 protectors. Her soul-stirring beautiful face was calm, but the formless coldness caused the hearts of the 9 protectors to violently tremble. "Aodong, I." The 9th guardian opened his mouth and his eyes flickered. Slap. Before he could finish speaking, the crisp sound of a slap rang out from the 9th protector's face. The slap caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood, and his old teeth flew out. "Do you think you have the right to call me Aodong? My son is not someone you can insult. I give you face and call you 9th guardian. If I don't give you face, so what if I call you an old dog?" The beautiful woman spoke. Her face was slightly gloomy, and there was a dignified aura around her that could suppress everyone here until they trembled in fear. At this moment, the beautiful woman seemed calm, but her majestic aura was increasing. She was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. The 9th guardian was stunned. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. You dare to hit me." After a long while, the 9 protectors covered half of their faces and came back to their senses. Their faces were filled with astonishment and disbelief, and their bodies trembled for no reason. Their legs trembled in the air, and they couldn't help but feel fear crawl out from the depths of their souls. "I didn't just hit you." The beautiful woman spoke as she looked directly at the 9 protectors. Suddenly, a dazzling light blossomed from her eyes, transforming into a dazzling sharp sword that was filled with the aura of a supreme being. After that, it rushed into the space between the 9 protectors' brows. Bang! A muffled sound rang out in the air. A bloody mist exploded, and the space collapsed. The 9th guardian's body exploded, and his spirit was destroyed. "You attacked my son. I can't let you live." The beautiful woman raised her head slightly and looked at the many old people and experts from the school of legalism. Her eyes were resplendent as she scanned everyone. Her eyes were dazzling, magnificent, and desolate. She was like a supreme being who could not be provoked. She said, "I'll kill anyone who dares to touch my son." Chapter 1560. At that moment, all the elders and experts of the Du family were stunned. They had never seen Han Aodong act so violently. She actually attacked and killed the 9 protectors on the spot. "Aodong, you've gone too far." The 2nd protector spoke. His eyes flickered with divine light, and his expression was cold. He stared at Han Aodong and said, "You are from the school of legalism. What you are doing is going against the school of legalism's laws." "You can't call me Aodong." Han Aodong stared at the 2 protectors without backing down. Right now, she faced all the experts and old men from the school of legalism by herself. She said, "I am a member of the school of legalism, but I'm also my son's mother. If I have to choose, I'll always choose my son and not you. If you dare to touch my son today, I'll kill you all." Han Aodong stood proudly in the air. At that moment, she was just a mother. Ordinary people could not understand the terror of a mother. For her child, a mother would do anything crazy, including Han Aodong. Countless legalist elders and experts in the surroundings had ugly expressions. It had already been more than 20 years. Han Aodong had been under house arrest for more than 20 years, yet she did not feel any remorse. Instead, she seemed to have become even more unyielding. "Han Aodong, you're challenging the authority of legalism. You should know the consequences." The 2nd protector's face was completely gloomy. His aura was majestic and his body was shrouded in a bright light. "All these years, I've been at your mercy. I thought my silence could exchange for the safety of the father and son. But you've gone too far and treated my son like this. Do you think I'll stop at just 20 years? Han Aodong said. Her voice was like a sword that shook people's souls. She looked around and said, "From now on, I won't be silent and patient anymore. I won't be at your mercy. If you don't believe me, you can try." Back then, she was separated from her husband. She had just given birth and was weak. She could not fight back. All these years, she had been at the mercy of the clan. Although her cultivation had improved tremendously, she was willing to bear everything alone in exchange for the safety of the father and son and for Xiaojing's withering heart disease. However, now that she had heard that Xiaofu's heart had been dug out by the BI, and she had seen her son being bullied by the entire clan, she could no longer back down. She knew the methods of the clan, and she knew that her child had suffered a great grievance and suffering. Although she hadn't seen it herself, she could imagine how much her heart was bleeding. At this moment, she was no longer the same person as before. In the past 20 years, she had turned all her longing for the father and son into motivation. She worked hard on her cultivation, and with her extraordinary talent, she was no longer the same as before. All of her hard work was so that one day, she wouldn't be as powerless as before. The second guardian's eyes were trembling, and his old face was gloomy. There were also some old men who looked indifferent and didn't say much. Fourth aunt is so powerful. Some of the legalism's younger generation girls were astonished. Their eyes were filled with ripples. They had never seen their fourth aunt so forceful and fierce. Han Aodong's gaze fell on the second guardian, and she no longer paid any attention to them. She turned around and looked at the young man in the battle robe on the pile of rubble below. When their gazes met, her heart suddenly pounded. Her hands started to tremble, and the coldness in her eyes dissipated. Her clear face calmed down. At this moment, she wanted to say something to the young man, but she found that she couldn't speak. She couldn't even open her mouth. Her eyes stung as if she wanted to cry, but she forced herself to hold back. Tears welled up in her eyes. Countless times, she had imagined what it would be like to see him for the first time in the future. However, she had never thought that when they finally met, she wouldn't even be able to open her mouth. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was also looking at the beautiful woman. He had seen her in his drunkard father's painting. That was his mother, the mother he had been thinking about day and night. Before coming to the school of legalism this time, Du Xiaofu was still looking forward to seeing his mother. What would he do if he could successfully see her? Would he be excited or excited? When his mother had arrived, Du Xiaofu's heart had suddenly trembled as if an electric current had surged through him. However, Du Xiaofu found that he had gradually calmed down. He didn't feel as excited as he had imagined. Instead, it was as if they had known each other for a long time. It was as if his mother had always been by his side and he had never lost her. This feeling was strange, but it was also familiar. That familiarity came from the 3 years she had been pregnant. They were connected by blood. At this moment, the mother and son looked at each other, and the surroundings were silent. So she's the Demon King, Du Xiaofu's mother. Some of the people from the various factions and families who didn't know what had happened finally understood, and they were incredibly shocked. They had never thought that the Demon King, Du Xiaofu, would have such a deep connection with legalism. Mother. Du Xiaofu opened his mouth and was the first to break the silence. His voice was calm but deep. Hearing that calm and deep voice, Han Aodong could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes. They flowed down her cheeks and her vision started to blur. However, a smile appeared on Han Aodong's beautiful face. Her aura was still supreme, and no one could provoke or offend her. Han Aodong's beautiful figure floated through the air and landed lightly on the pile of rubble. Her beautiful face opened her mouth before she spoke. She looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Child, let him go. Mother is here. I won't let you suffer anymore." Du Xiaofu nodded. He reached out and threw Han Ningma, whose neck had turned red, to the side. He didn't pay any more attention to her. "Let's go. Mother will take you away from here," Han Aodong said. Her beautiful figure flew out and left the square. "I recognize you." Du Xiaofu looked at the second guardian calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, he followed behind Han Aodong and left. For some reason, when the second guardian saw Du Xiaofu's calm gaze, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He felt uneasy and his divine soul trembled for no reason. He had never felt that way before. Under countless gazes, Du Xiaofu left, leaving behind only his back. In the end, he completely disappeared in mid-air. Huff, huff. At this moment, the surrounding people gradually began to regain their senses. Then, there were sounds of people sucking in cold breaths. Coo coo. Looking at the pile of rubble on the broken martial-proof platform and the extremely miserable Han Ningma, who was dripping with blood, countless people felt their throats burning as they swallowed their saliva. The nirvana of a supreme martial artist. Hong Qi, Huang Linger, Hong Anai, Su Lingzi, and Mo Junyu, and the other representatives of the major forces and clans all had a change of expression. Their eyes trembled as they thought of many things. Dragon Fifth's eyes were dull as he trembled violently. He had never thought that this guy was actually the Demon King Du Xiaofu who had killed his 9th brother. He was even the legendary supreme martial artist. As for Meng Wui, Heng Rushi, Guan Lianin, and the others, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this moment. They had never thought that the Demon King Du Xiaofu, a supreme martial artist who had achieved nirvana of a supreme martial artist, would be such a clown. He had obviously come to find trouble with legalism, but in the end, he made them lose all their treasures and made them lose everything they had. Demon King Du Xiaofu is too evil. In the end, someone secretly cursed it. They had seen the Demon King's strength with their own eyes. Even someone as strong as Han Ningma couldn't withstand a single blow. They probably wouldn't have the chance to get their treasures back in this lifetime. As for the disciples of legalism, they were all in a daze at this moment, unable to recover from their shock. A supreme martial artist who had achieved nirvana was like a million mountains crushing their hearts. Han Ma's defeat had shattered their confidence and reliance that was enough to look down on everything in the outside world. They no longer had any pride to speak of. Chapter 1561. The quiet courtyard was huge and quiet. Although the furnishings were simple, they were very elegant. However, it was obvious that no one had been in the courtyard for a while. But there were probably servants who cleaned the place. There was no dust, and it was very clean. Have you been through hard times all these years? In the small hall, Han Aodong looked at Du Xiaofu. She raised her head slightly. The baby was now a head taller than her. She could vaguely see the traces of him. The heroic spirit between his brows was exactly the same. No. Du Xiaofu shook his head and replied, "Do you hate your mother?" Han Aodong looked at Du Xiaofu. She looked in the direction of Du Xiaofu's heart and asked with a trembling voice, "Your heart? I don't hate it." Du Xiaofu shook his head again and replied, "I'm fine. It's all in the past. As long as Xiaojing is fine, I'm fine too." "You've suffered because of Xiaojing," Han Aodong said. She felt an indescribable sadness in her heart. "Xiaojing is my sister. We are connected by blood. We are a family that cannot be separated," Du Xiaofu said with a smile on his face. "Child." At this moment, Han Aodong finally could not help but choke up. She looked at the young man in front of her. How could she not know how much he had suffered? "I'm really fine. All these years, my father has missed you and my sister very much." Du Xiaofu opened his mouth, and a smile appeared on his resolute face. "How is your father?" Han Aodong calmed down when she heard that. She looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. She was also worried about the other man. She missed the father and son every day. Father entered Jinlei Tinsei's cave. "I don't know how he is now, but he should be fine," Du Xiaofu replied. Then, the mother and son became a little awkward. They looked at each other and did not know what to say. The mother and son were speechless. They had never met each other since they were young, so they didn't know what to say. Du Xiaofu felt a little uncomfortable and awkward in his heart. Thinking about his mother at this moment, he was probably even sadder. Therefore, Du Xiaofu took the initiative to talk about a lot of things. He didn't know what to say, so he talked about the interesting things that had happened since he was young. Han Aodong's gaze was fixed on Du Xiaofu. It was as if she had not seen him for more than 20 years and wanted to make up for it all. From childhood until now, Du Xiaofu had hidden all the dangerous situations he had encountered. He didn't say much and appeared to be very relaxed. Han Aodong smiled when she heard about her child's childhood. When she heard that her child had established a country called Huang, defeated Kyushu, slayed dragons in the Tianhuang mainland, and achieved nirvana in the golden-winged rock race, Han Aodong's eyes lit up and she was filled with pride. She could imagine how amazing her child was. However, Han Aodong's heart was filled with bitterness. How could she not know what kind of training he had gone through all these years? Otherwise, how could he have such achievements? However, she was glad that her child was standing in front of her at this moment. More importantly, he was fine. "You fought with Han Ma. Are you injured? Quick, take some elixirs." Then, Han Aodong seemed to have just remembered something. She immediately took out a large pile of elixirs from her chinkuan bag and handed them to Du Xiaofu. There were all kinds of elixirs. Du Xiaofu smiled helplessly and took a few elixirs. Actually, he wasn't injured. He was just a little exhausted. However, Du Xiaofu knew that as a mother, she would always want to leave everything to her child. If he didn't take the elixirs, she would definitely be worried. This was the first time the mother and son met after being separated for more than 20 years. Du Xiaofu knew that his mother was feeling guilty, so she wanted to make it up to him. Du Xiaofu could feel it. The mother and son spent a long time together and talked a lot. Du Xiaofu also found out from his mother that his sister, Xiaojing, was still in seclusion, so she didn't appear. Then, Han Aodong left. She seemed to have something to do. She told Du Xiaofu to go to his room and adjust his breathing. In the room, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on the bed. He was in a daze, as if he couldn't believe it. Did he really see his mother? Perhaps it was because he had never seen her since he was young, but everything made Du Xiaofu a little dazed. It felt a little unreal. Then, Du Xiaofu closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. He didn't hide anything and activated the cultivation method of the golden-winged rock clan. A day passed slowly. However, it was an extremely long and heavy day for the entire legalism. There was silence everywhere. Not many people spoke. At night, the moon was dark and the stars were bright. There are only two paths. Let him join legalism, or kill him as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he grows up, he will be a huge threat to our entire legalism. It's already a miracle that the kid didn't die after losing his heart. His martial vein is terrifying. He can integrate 3 spiritual thunders and comprehend the supreme beast energy of the golden-winged rock clan. The aura on his body is like that of a real golden-winged rock. He can even go through nirvana. There must be a huge secret on him. If we can find out all these secrets, we can create countless peak juniors for our legalism. That kid can go through nirvana. He must have many secrets on him. It's a miracle that he didn't die after losing his heart and integrated 3 spiritual thunders. If our legalism can find out the secrets on him, we can definitely suppress the other 8 families, the 4 Seas, and Wudong Mountain. I'm just afraid that the kid won't be willing. Han Aodong is also helping outsiders. We can't do as we wish. We can't tolerate him. He must stay in legalism. At the very least, he must hand over the secrets on him. The blood of our legalism flows in his body. He has an obligation to do his best for our legalism. His personality isn't suitable to be forced. It's best if he is willing to stay in legalism. An elder was worried. Only if he is willing to stay can he last. If he is willing to stay, then he knows what's good for him. But if he doesn't know what's good for him, Rumor has it that the kid is the young master of the golden-winged Great Rock Clan. If we force him too much, we might alarm the golden-winged Great Rock Clan. Some people were also afraid of the golden-winged Great Rock Clan. That was a terrifying supreme beast clan. This is legalism. After all, the blood of our legalism flows in that kid's body. What does he have to do with the golden-winged Great Rock Clan? Don't tell me he dares to kill his way into our legalism. That kid is a human. How can he be the young master of the golden-winged Great Rock Clan? I'm afraid there are some secrets behind this. It might not be true. Many elders were sitting upright in the main hall. Their eyes flickered and revealed divine light when they opened and closed. They were discussing Du Xiaofu's matter through the night. There were different opinions and disputes. They only dispersed very late. At night, pearls were shining brightly in the quiet courtyard room. Han Aodong sat upright. She had a needle, thread, and cloth in her hands. She was sewing clothes. Occasionally, Han Aodong would raise her eyes to look at the wall. A smile would appear on her face. She was very happy. Her heart had never felt more at ease. Her son was next door meditating. Her heart was filled with a feeling of joy. This feeling was different from when she was with his father. However, it still made her feel at ease. Throughout the night, Han Aodong would take a short rest while sewing. She could not help but walk to the door next door. She reached out and wanted to push open the door. She wanted to take a good look at her son. She wanted to touch his face, his hair, and his eyebrows and nose that were exactly the same as his. However, she resisted. Her son was meditating. She did not want to disturb him. She didn't dare either. To her, the infant in swaddling clothes was already so heroic and peerless when they met again. She thought that this was a dream. Everything had happened so suddenly that it didn't seem real at all. Hence, she was afraid. After all, her son was still a stranger to her. She was afraid that she would scare her son and cause him to disappear in front of her again. Tingxian, our child is very outstanding. He is even more outstanding than you. It has been hard on you all these years. Soon, we will be able to meet again and reunite as a family. Right? I miss you so much, Han Aodong murmured. At that moment, she was very happy. After all, her son was by her side now. Things seemed to be progressing well. Perhaps soon, their family would be reunited. His clothes are torn. I have to rush him out. Then, Han Aodong returned to the room. Her beautiful face revealed a satisfied smile as she continued to sew clothes. At that moment, she was not the Han Aodong of legalism. She was not the Han Aodong who had once shocked the 9 great families. She was just an ordinary mother. After a night, The morning light swept away the night sky. Phew! In the morning, Du Xiaofu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air as he meditated. He retracted his breath. The golden light on his body flashed and finally disappeared. His eyes shone with a golden light. Then, they became clear again. Du Xiaofu felt that his mother had returned. She had been standing outside the door for quite some time. "Mother!" Du Xiaofu pushed open the door. His mother was standing outside. Chapter 1562. I see that your clothes are torn. Try them on and see if they fit, Han Aodong said. Her voice was very gentle. She was a completely different person from the domineering person on the martial arts platform yesterday. Du Xiaofu was stunned and took the clothes. Put them on and see if they fit. Han Aodong pushed Du Xiaofu back into the room and closed the door. Then, Han Aodong started to feel nervous. She did not know if the clothes she made would fit him. If the workmanship was not good enough, would he dislike it? In the room, Du Xiaofu held the clothes in his hands. There was a clean and tidy pair of underwear. The outer garment was a purple battle robe. The material was very good. It seemed to have been mixed with the skin of some demonic beast. It was soft but hard. It would not be easy to tear. The workmanship of the clothes was only average. If one looked carefully, there were many lines and wrong stitches. This was sewn by mother herself. Du Xiaofu was sure that the clothes were made by his mother. He put them on. They fit him well. It proved that his mother had sewed it herself last night. Otherwise, it would not fit him so well. As Du Xiaofu stroked the purple battle suit on his body, he finally felt the reality of it. Tears welled up in his eyes. When Du Xiaofu walked out of the room again, Han Aodong looked at the young man in the purple battle robe in front of her. She sighed in relief. It seemed to fit. Then she saw it clearly and deliberately asked in a gentle voice, "Does it fit?" "Yes." Du Xiaofu nodded. Then he added, "It fits me very well." "That's good." Han Aodong smiled. Then, she said embarrassedly, "It's just that the style is not good. I was born to be a clothes hanger. I look good in everything," Du Xiaofu said as he patted his chest. He was not humble at all. He felt that he was telling the truth. "You're so shameless. Let's see which girl can stand you in the future." Han Aodong was very happy. She felt that the distance between her son and her was getting closer and closer. "Girls? If mother likes them, I'll marry a few more in the future," Du Xiaofu said with a smile, revealing his white teeth. His eyes were clear and bright. "If those girls don't have any objections, mother naturally won't have any objections. However, you're not allowed to deceive those girls. Otherwise, mother won't forgive you." Han Aodong pinched her son's face gently. At this moment, she truly felt that her son, whom she had been thinking about day and night, was finally by her side. It was so real. "By the way, I went to visit an ancestor in my family yesterday. I wanted to bring you to visit him, but that ancestor has yet to return from his travels. He's not in his home right now." Then, Han Aodong deliberately said, "Back then, the one who protected you and your father in the end was that patriarch. He has always taken good care of me. I only found out yesterday that when you killed some people from legalism on Tianhuang mainland, the patriarch also spoke out." "I know him," Du Xiaofu nodded. Back then, he had also seen a dazzling figure in the void painting. Although he did not see his real body, he should be the patriarch that his mother was talking about. After the incident on Tianhuang mainland, the people from legalism did not do anything. Du Xiaofu had also found it strange. It turned out that the legalism patriarch had spoken out. Du Xiaofu was not stupid. Yesterday, his mother had left to find the ancestor who had always been taking care of her. It was probably because of him. He had caused some trouble in the school of legalism, and his mother wanted the ancestor to help resolve it. However, today is the old supremacy's birthday. In terms of seniority, he should be your great-great-grandson. He said that he wants to see you first today, Han Aodong said. She looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "I know everything that legalism has done to you. The old supremacy probably wants to see you to ask for your opinion on whether you want to stay in legalism. When the time comes, you can decide for yourself. I know that you are peerless, but legalism might be stronger than you think. You can refuse, but at least before you have enough strength, don't let anything happen. I don't want to lose you again. Yes, I understand. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. He then nodded and said to his mother, I can go see him. Perform well. My son is the strongest. Han Aodong said. Her eyes were filled with radiance. She said to Du Xiaofu seriously, as for the other people from legalism, I won't let them bully you again. I'm not that easy to bully. Du Xiaofu smiled. After a while, in front of a lake, there were ripples. The surroundings were lush. There was a small bridge, flowing water, and green bamboo. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant. In an exquisite and simple courtyard, Du Xiaofu met the person he wanted to see alone under the guidance of his mother. Du Xiaofu originally thought that it would be an old man or an old man. However, the result was beyond Du Xiaofu's imagination. In the end, Du Xiaofu met a middle-aged man who looked like he was in his 40s. However, Du Xiaofu knew very well that this was the old supremacy of legalism. He was a terrifying existence who had lived for thousands of years. Great supreme nirvana. Peerless talent. Not bad, little guy. The old supremacy said with a smile in his eyes. His youthful appearance could easily dazzle people. He didn't look like the old supremacy of legalism at all. His appearance was also very ordinary. However, his aura were enough to make people respect and look up to him. This was a terrifying existence. He was probably a terrifying expert who could move unhindered in this world. Du Xiaofu didn't dare to be arrogant at this moment. He bowed respectfully. You also have the blood of legalism in you. No matter what reason you had in the past, you've experienced a lot. However, it's all in the past. Don't worry and stay here in the future. If some people want to do anything, I'll teach them a lesson. No one will find trouble with you anymore. The old supremacy smiled. He didn't put on any airs. Du Xiaofu didn't say anything. It seemed like he didn't know how to respond to the old supremacy's words. As for joining legalism, Du Xiaofu was naturally unwilling in his heart. If you're free in the future, you should take a look around legalism. There are many places that are good for you. From now on, you're qualified to go anywhere in legalism. The old supremacy looked at Du Xiaofu and smiled. Thank you. Du Xiaofu opened his mouth. He still didn't know what to say. The old supremacy suddenly smiled. He looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, "Oh right, I heard that there are 10 beauties in the younger generation. Do you want to marry all of them?" Du Xiaofu was stunned. He didn't expect the old supremacy to ask about this. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Young people are all hot-blooded. If you like them, you can marry all of them. It's no big deal. The old supremacy said, I'm afraid that even if I'm willing, the 10 ladies won't be willing. Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. Don't worry. If I ask, they won't be unwilling. The old supremacy looked at Du Xiaofu. He seemed to be sizing him up. He smiled and said, Of course, with your talent, it's their destiny to follow you. In the future, legalism will spread its branches and leaves. We'll definitely be able to nurture even more little fellows like you. Du Xiaofu was speechless. He couldn't say anything more. Could it be that he really had to marry one of the 10 beauties? Did he really have to? Du Xiaofu thought to himself. All right, you can slowly think about this matter. Now, I'll take you for a walk. A smile appeared on the face of the old High Lord as he led Du Xiaofu away. Although legalism had been heavy yesterday, it was still very lively today. The atmosphere was jubilant. Many places were covered with the word longevity. Today was the old supremacy's birthday. He had invited people from all over to congratulate him. He was also going to hold a sermon. Many families and major powers had sent their juniors to congratulate him. The Beast region, the Yao region, the Four Seas, and Wudong Mountain had all sent people. Many people came. Although on one hand, they were here to spy on each other, they were also here to preach the Tao on the altar. The old supremacy of legalism was a terrifying powerhouse who had lived for thousands of years. If he was willing to hold a sermon, it would be a great opportunity for the younger generation. In the vast square, a sea of people had gathered early in the morning. This wasn't the martial-proof stage, but rather another plaza within legalism. It was extremely vast, with a high platform in the center. Gradually, the Mo family and the other 8 great families, the dragons, Huanglinger, and the other beast clans, as well as other major powers, had all been led here by the Du family. Everyone in the plaza was waiting. It was very quiet. No one made a sound. Even the arrogant dragons were respectful. They didn't say a word. Today, the old supremacy of legalism was going to hold a sermon. He couldn't help but feel reverence in his heart. Many of the legalism's elders and powerhouses were also present. This was a rare opportunity. They all wanted to listen. They hoped to gain some enlightenment and advance further. Rumble. As the sun rose higher in the sky, dazzling light suddenly appeared on the high platform. It was mysterious and vast. Two figures appeared. One was a middle-aged man, the other a youth in purple battle robes. When they saw that the youth in purple was none other than Du Xiaofu, many people were astonished. Many of the legalism's members were also surprised. Their gazes rippled. Happy birthday to the old supremacy. Happy birthday to Ancestor Xian. When the middle-aged man appeared, Du Xiaofu was astonished for a moment. Then, from the legalism's elders and powerhouses, some of them knelt down on one knee and began to respectfully offer their blessings. The sound waves converged and resounded through the clouds. Finally, a large longevity character appeared in the clouds above. It released a dazzling light that was profound and dazzling. Congratulations to the old supremacy for having fortune as boundless as the four seas and a long life as long as the heavens. Heng Qi, Void Spirit, Jiang Yunfeng, Dragon Fifth, Huang Linger, Hong and I, and the others from the various great families and powers bowed respectfully. Although they were in awe, they didn't kneel. They only bowed. Rise, all of you, the old supremacy said with a smile. His voice was loud and clear, shaking the void. Chapter 1563. Boom. At the same time, a powerful wave of energy emanated from the old supremacy, shaking the heavens and the earth. Finally, it turned into a ray of light that filled the sky. As a result, the sky was filled with dazzling symbols that illuminated the surroundings. It was as if a god had descended into the world. The old supremacy is going to preach. Everyone was excited. They immediately sat down cross-legged and prepared to listen to the sound of the Tao. Xiaofu, why don't you sit beside me? The old supremacy gestured for Du Xiaofu to sit beside him and listen. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all astonished. The old supremacy's action was undoubtedly a declaration to legalism, as well as to Kyushu, the Yao realm, and the Beast region that legalism had accepted Du Xiaofu's existence and treated him well. Even Han Ma might not have received such treatment in the past to be able to sit beside the old supremacy and listen to the sound of the Tao. However, afterwards, many people came to an understanding. Du Xiaofu, the demon king who had undergone nirvana, had a close relationship with the school of legalism. The school of legalism would obviously do everything they could to rope him in. Du Xiaofu didn't refuse. He looked at his mother from afar, then sat down cross-legged behind the old supremacy. The Tao is the origin of all things. It is the origin of all logic. The Tao is the origin of all things. As the old supremacy spoke, light spread out from his body and enveloped him. Countless strange phenomena appeared in the sky, as if forming a world of its own. Listen carefully and seek the fruit of the Tao. All the disciples of legalism were pleasantly surprised and listened carefully. All living things in the world, all living things in the world. One thought for an eternity, the second thought for the Middle Ages, and the third thought for the present age. As the old supremacy spoke, light enveloped him like a miracle. His voice was like the sound of the Tao, piercing through the hearts of people and resounding throughout the world. At this moment, Qi Jiajun, Huang Linger, and the others were also immersed in the sound of the Tao. The old sovereign's sermon lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, causing the heavens and earth to move. The stars rotated and countless strange phenomena surged out. It was as if he had led everyone through 100 reincarnations, and everyone had benefited greatly. On the square, countless people sat cross-legged, their bodies shrouded in fluorescent light. They were immersed in it and did not wake up for a long time. From the 4th day onwards, there were people who made breakthroughs one after another. There were quite a few followers of legalism. Among those who obtained a spot to enter this time, there were some who broke through as well. Their eyes revealed looks of joy as they obtained great benefits. In the sixth and seventh heavens, there were also people from the school of Taoism, the school of vertical and horizontal, as well as the other 8 major schools. On the 8th day, Du Xiaofu woke up. Golden light flickered in his eyes, and the radiance on his body was restrained. Du Xiaofu looked at the old supremacy on the high platform. He did not know when the old supremacy had disappeared, but in the past few days, he had indeed gained some insights. However, perhaps it was because he had undergone the nirvana of a grand supreme that he did not walk the path of an ordinary person. Du Xiaofu realized that the enlightenment he gained was not too great, but he had already benefited a lot. After that, people in the square woke up one after another. On the 11th day, legalism took out many treasures as rewards. Some followers of legalism who obtained a spot to enter legalism this time received some extraordinary treasures. There were heavenly treasures, spiritual herbs, and artifacts. The most valuable one was a half-step saint artifact. Legalism rewarded it to Hui Mutian from the school of vertical and horizontal. Afterward, the people from the various families and major forces left one after another, and legalism gradually returned to its peaceful state. However, this also meant that the outside world was destined to not be peaceful anymore. The Demon King, Du Xiaofu, had achieved nirvana and was currently in legalism. Once the news spread out, it was enough to shake the entire world. During these days, Du Xiaofu accompanied his mother. After the mother and son got to know each other, they became much closer. "Child, you must have suffered a lot in the outside world over the years. Our lineage is very happy that you've returned this time, and we hope to do something for you. Out of the 10 beauties of legalism, if you like a few of them, why don't you marry them? It'll be another joyous occasion for our school of legalism." On that day, an old man from the school of legalism appeared. In terms of seniority, he could be considered Han Aodong's granduncle. His status in the school of legalism was clearly quite high. He was an extraordinary elder of the school of legalism. His expression was rather kind as he asked Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, "I want to marry them. However, marriage is a big matter, and it has to be decided by my parents. My father is not by my side, so I have to ask for his opinion." "Don't worry. When your father comes back, your family will be reunited," said the old man. "Back then, legalism promised to look for my father. Why hasn't it done anything? Otherwise, my father would have been in legalism long ago," Du Xiaofu said calmly. The old man was stunned. He could feel the resentment in Du Xiaofu's heart. He said, "Child, some things have already passed. Isn't everything developing in a good direction now? You've also seen your mother. In the future, your family will be able to reunite. Our family is reunited. Do you need me to stay in legalism?" Du Xiaofu asked. "You are a legalism person. The blood of legalism flows in your body," said the old man kindly. "Phew!" Du Xiaofu took a deep breath and looked at the old man calmly. He asked, "Then why wasn't it like this in the past? Why did legalism want to kill me time and time again?" The old man was stunned. Then he said, "Perhaps you have misunderstood. If legalism really accepts me, why do I have to stay in legalism?" Du Xiaofu said to the old man, "Back then, the second protector brought people to separate my family. If legalism really treats me well, shouldn't it let me deal with it?" Du Xiaofu raised these 2 requests. The old man could not answer. "Child, a wise man submits to circumstances. I am your elder. This is for your own good. Think about it carefully." The old man shook his head and sighed. In the end, he left. "Child, the reason why the elder is looking for you is to ask you to stay in legalism, right?" After a while, in the courtyard, Han Aodong asked Du Xiaofu. Although she was not there, she was smart and guessed the elder's intention. "Yes, I said I have to think about it." Du Xiaofu did not say anything more. He did not want his mother to worry. These days, Du Xiaofu roughly knew that his mother had been in legalism for more than 20 years and could not go out. She did not know anything about the outside world. Even when he came to legalism, his mother did not know. This was half-house arrest. Therefore, this made Du Xiaofu feel even more resentful. In this huge legalism, his mother's words did not carry much weight. If she could change anything, she would have done so long ago. Therefore, Du Xiaofu did not say much. He smiled and did not want his mother to worry. Just do as you wish. If they still make things difficult for you this time, I will not let it go. Even if I have to fight them, Han Aodong said. Han Aodong spoke. Her expression became a bit colder, and her gaze was resolute. This time, no one could touch her son. I understand. Du Xiaofu smiled lightly and said, Mother, after my sister comes out of seclusion, let's go home and take a look. Let's go see your son's desolate country. To Du Xiaofu, legalism was not his home. The home in his heart was always in Stone City, followed by the ancient Heaven Sect, the Seven-Star Hall, the Golden-Winged Great Peng Clan, and even Tianwu Academy. However, legalism was not his home. At least, Du Xiaofu did not feel any sense of home in legalism. Okay, after your sister comes out of seclusion, I will go see my son's desolate country. As for me, am I the Empress Dowager? Han Aodong smiled. In the evening, the sun was setting in the west. The sunset dyed the sky red. Impudent. That brat clearly does not want to stay in legalism. He even wants to punish me. How dare he? In the main hall, the second protector sat in a corner with a gloomy expression. Does he really think that our legalism needs him just because he has achieved nirvana? That brat is much harder to control than Xiaojing. If we let him stay, he might directly affect Xiaojing in the future. If anything happens to Xiaojing, it will be a real disaster. Xiaojing cannot have any accidents. If that brat really doesn't know how to appreciate kindness, we must not let him stay. Otherwise, he will affect Xiaojing in the future. He has achieved nirvana. If he really wants to stay, it will bring endless benefits to our legalism. Even if it's just to satisfy some of his wishes, we should let him stay. There were also people who wanted to persuade him to stay. How can we let him stay? Let him deal with the second protector? If that's the case, won't all of us be punished by him in the future? This is legalism. Someone strongly objected. There was another argument in the main hall. After a long time, the figures left one after another.